Information Radio. We are live in our CBC studios in downtown Winnipeg. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, or maybe on YouTube watching this morning. Thanks for making time for us. We're on air till 8:37 AM. We'll get you through your morning with your morning commute in Manitoba. If you've got anything early to report, the lines are already open, 788-3093. Let's say good morning to the team at 3 minutes to 6. Corey Funk is our show director and also will be on air covering your commute. Good morning, Corey. Good morning, Abby Adeyemi behind the controls of the show, who is our technical producer. Abby also will be on air covering these forecasts, which, by the way, look not bad. Mainly cloudy, high of 7 for Winnipeg, that is today. In Brandon, about 8 with cloud cover. And up in Thompson today, mix of sun and cloud and a high of -2. And also good morning to Kevin Nipatebo, who's here from our YouTube stream. Kevin's our YouTube producer. So good morning, Kev. Let's get into what's happening in the news. Heather Wells has returned this morning. She's here with your headlines. Hi.
Well, a lawsuit filed this week alleges negligence by staff at Health Sciences Centre led to or contributed to the death of a teenage girl last year. The 17-year-old entered the Winnipeg Hospital's emergency department after expressing suicidal thoughts to a school counselor. We'll tell you more about that. And 2 Winnipeggers have been named as suspects in the BC shooting at the home of a chart-topping Punjabi singer, A.P. Dillon. No one was hurt in that September shooting, but police have charged a 25-year-old from Winnipeg, and another man, also known to have lived in Winnipeg, is wanted for the same crimes, but it's believed he has since returned to India. So we'll hear more on those stories and other news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In the first hour of our program, we're going to talk about National Diabetes Awareness Month, which is this month, November. We'll have a Winnipeg man on to share his story. He lives with the condition. We'll talk about how he's made diabetes manageable using technology. And you might recall on a recent medical column, some of those tech devices, especially as they relate to helping people who live with diabetes, our tech columnist, Dr. Bardwaj, medical columnist rather, called them game changers. So we're going to find out why. A little bit later in the program, we may not have the iconic parade full of masks here in Winnipeg, but the Mexican Association is making sure our city has something special planned for the Day of the Dead, and we're going to hear all about that. Stay tuned. That and much more, of course, but World Report is up next.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
Lindsay L. is a former child prodigy guitarist from Calgary who found herself in Nashville making country music. Now she's opening up about what she's gone through, eating disorders, sexual assault, and how it's all led to her making her most personal album yet.
It's like, I need help. I can't do this alone.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Presidential candidates will be working hard this weekend to sway voters. And as Americans contemplate their choice in these final days ahead of the election, a warning about disinformation is coming from a swing state. Officials in Georgia say a video related to the election is circulating online. It appears to show an illegal immigrant claiming to have voted with multiple IDs. They say the video is false, and it's likely foreign interference. Now there's an effort to reassure voters this system is safe. Gabrielle Sterling is Georgia's chief electoral officer.
Well, we have done more to invest in list maintenance than any other state in the country. We arguably have the cleanest voting lists in America. So we have a very secure system. We know it's safe, we know it's secure, and we know it's easy to vote.
In Georgia, support from Black communities is critical to both presidential candidates. My World Report co-host John Northcott has the story from Savannah.
Lunchtime at Savannah State University, the oldest historically Black university in Georgia. Freshmen and sophomore students grab a bite and sit outside in the sunshine. This is their first election as voters, and they're looking for change. Chaz Ferguson is 18.
Our ancestors went through a lot. Slavery, they went through a lot for us to get this freedom. They didn't do all that for nothing.
Joe Biden won Georgia in 2020 by just 0.2%. With over 30% of the state's population who identify as Black, it's an absolutely essential demographic for the Democrats. Journalist Tia Mitchell co-hosts the podcast Politically Georgia.
Black voters are the backbone of the Democratic Party.
But there are concerns this year about Black voter turnout. And the polls suggest some Black Georgians are warming to Trump's message.
If I said I understood that, I would be lying.
Democratic organizer Felicia Vereen admits it's a challenge.
But I really think that they believe that in the past he has helped their businesses, he has helped them to make more money.
But for the young students at Savannah State, though, the choice is clear. Jasmine Hall and Gabrielle Thomas are both 19. They're for Kamala Harris, not Donald Trump.
As a college student, I shouldn't vote for him. And as a woman, he's taking away the abortions and student loans.
It's such a long list. Right. It's a very long list.
And then he's racist.
In an election this tight, as people weigh who best understands their history and their hopes, a few thousand Georgia voters could decide for the whole country who will be the next president. John Northcott, CBC News, Savannah, Georgia.
John will be reporting and hosting from this key state until after Election Day. Stay tuned for special editions of World Report in Georgia tomorrow and Sunday. Georgia is not the only battleground state. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are crisscrossing the country looking for those critical votes in other key swing states. Karen Pauls is following the election campaign from Washington. And Karen, both candidates held late-night events. What are the highlights?
Former President Donald Trump is increasingly undermining public confidence in this election. Again last night in Arizona, he repeated false election fraud claims during an interview with former Fox host Tucker Carlson. Trump never conceded defeat to Joe Biden in 2020. He says he will win on Tuesday unless there's cheating.
We're doing very well. I think we're leading by a lot. If we can keep that cheating down, because there are a bunch of cheats, if we can keep that cheating down, we're going to have a tremendous victory. I think it'll go down as one of the greatest victories of all time.
There is no evidence of cheating or voter fraud. Vice President Kamala Harris promised to fight for working people in Las Vegas. She was joined by celebrity Jennifer Lopez, who got emotional when talking about the comment about Puerto Rico being a floating island of garbage at Trump's rally last weekend.
He has consistently worked to divide us. At Madison Square Garden, he reminded us who he really is and how he really feels. It wasn't just Puerto Ricans that were offended that day, okay? It was every Latino in this country. It was humanity and anyone of decent character.
So, Karen, what is on the agenda for today?
Harris and Trump are both in Wisconsin. Sunday is the deadline for early voting there. Harris has a concert and rally at the Wisconsin State Fairground featuring big names like Glorilla, Flo Milli, and the Isley Brothers. Cardi B is expected to speak. Trump is holding a rally just 10 kilometers away. Wisconsin is an extremely close race. Polling shows Harris holds the slimmest of leads over Trump there.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Karen Pauls in Washington. The number of people killed in Spain's catastrophic floods has climbed to 158. Rescue crews are still searching for dozens of other people. The areas in the east were the hardest hit. They're now cleaning up. Heavy equipment moves mounds of wrecked cars piled up by the raging floodwaters. The government has announced close to $300 million of aid for those affected. Earlier in the week, torrential rain caused Spain's worst flooding in 40 years. The tragedy is being attributed to climate change. Taiwan is also cleaning up this morning, a day after the powerful typhoon Kong-Ray swept through the island. In the capital, Taipei, wind gusting up to 130 kilometers an hour took down trees and damaged buildings.
This
resident says many apartment buildings, including hers, are old. She says they will keep needing to be fixed if there is another typhoon, and there's a need to adapt infrastructure to the changing climate. Typhoon Kong-Ray is being blamed for 2 deaths and more than 500 injuries. RCMP in British Columbia have made a record drug bust. They've taken down a super lab near Kamloops. Authorities believe it was run by international organized crime. As Bell Puri reports, police say the drugs would have generated $500 million of profit on the street.
Federal policing investigators have dismantled the largest and most sophisticated drug super lab in Canadian history.
RCMP say the lab involved mass production and distribution of fentanyl and methamphetamine across Canada and internationally. Assistant Commissioner David Tibol is the RCMP's Pacific Region commander.
The over 95 million potentially legal doses of fentanyl that have been seized could have taken the lives of every Canadian at least twice over.
It's estimated the 54 kilograms of fentanyl, 390 kilograms of meth, and 35 kilograms of cocaine could have amounted to $485 million in profit. Aside from the drugs, police also seized 89 firearms, several small explosives, body armor, and $500,000 in cash. Several shipments of drugs destined for international export were also stopped. The Super Lab was located in Falkland, BC, an unincorporated community about 50 kilometers east of Kamloops.
The environmental safety mitigation and cleanup costs for this drug super lab has thus far amounted to over $1 million, and those costs continue to increase day by day.
One person has been arrested, charged, and is currently in custody. Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Alberta is making big changes to the way it deals with gender-affirming care and sex education. The provincial government has introduced bills addressing the issue in the legislature. As Aaron Collins reports, Premier Danielle Smith is already getting pushback, and this weekend, she's coming up to a leadership review.
Bill 26.
Bill 27. Bill 29, the fairness...
A busy day in Alberta's legislature.
All those in favor of the motion for first reading, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no.
A flurry of bills dealing with sexuality, among them restrictions on gender-affirming care for minors, including access to surgery and puberty blockers, a move to protect kids, according to Premier Danielle Smith.
These policies are designed and intended to help preserve the choices children have before they make serious decisions about their bodies.
The bills will also change sex ed in schools. Parents will now have to opt their kids in instead of opting out, a problem for Pam Krause, who operates Calgary's Centre for Sexuality.
There's lots and lots and lots of parents who are really, really happy that sexual health education takes place in schools, and they don't need an extra layer of approval.
The schools will now have to inform parents when kids ask to change their pronouns too, and Alberta will restrict transgender athletes' participation in sport. Laws that have more to do with politics than policy for NDP leader Naheed Nenshi.
The only health care and education bills coming forth this session are bills to satisfy people who may or may not vote for the Premier this Saturday.
Danielle Smith faces a leadership review this weekend. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
And on the Edmonton page at cbcnews.ca, Michelle Bellefontaine has more on this story. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio. We're live on CBC in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app, and on YouTube. Nice to see you. We are at a high of 7 degrees today in Winnipeg. Abby's going to take us to our current conditions in the weather in just a moment and get us through Friday, November 1st, get us into the weekend. Well, last night in Morris, Tyler Johnston said there were 186 kids at the door. Said it was a great night for trick-or-treating. So every morning after Halloween, every year rather, the morning after Halloween, I like to ask how many kids you got and what the best costume was. Just connects us around Manitoba. So you can weigh in on Facebook or give us a call. But my Facebook page is Marcy Marcusa. Two more serious things. This hour, November's National Diabetes Awareness Month. We're going to meet a Winnipegger, hear how he manages the disease and how he says technology really helps him. And there's a new report from Canada's Communication Security Establishment. It says Chinese hacking is the top state cyber threat to Canada. And we will dig into that report in some more detail. Plus, you might have just heard on World Report, the CBC Marketplace investigation. They looked at how accessible Air Canada flights really are. Travis Danraj is going to be on with us live this hour with more details as well on that. So that's just before 7. Heather Wells is back this morning at 6:11. Let's go to her now and find out about headlines. Hi.
Hi there. Well, the cost of reopening Portage and Main to pedestrians is on the rise. A new city report says it'll cost $21 million. That's up from an approved budget of $13 million. Only one construction company bid on the work, and that bid came in higher than expected. The work is supposed to be complete by July. And the city of Thompson is relinquishing ambulance services to Shared Health. The Northern City's local firefighter and emergency department has been providing ambulance service in exchange for provincial funding, but the city says that department lacks adequate funding and faces staffing vacancies and soaring ambulance volumes. Shared Health is going to take over ambulance service in Thompson in February. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather Wells. Let's get into what's going on now in the forecast in your morning commute. Say good morning to the team. Corey Funk, hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
Doing good.
Good. Abby Adiyemi, good morning to you.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
Yeah. So the best costume I saw last night wasn't at the door. It was on Facebook. Oh, my goodness. A baby dressed as broccoli. And all they did was, I shouldn't say all, but it's inspired to me. There were knitted pom-poms in various shades of green. You know when you buy a head of broccoli at the store and sometimes light and dark, and right? And the kid had a hat on, and then the big pom-pom hat, and then there was broccoli around the arm sleeves of the green sleeper, and it was just the cutest thing ever. Yeah, loved it.
I saw loads of Frenchies. They were so cute, all dressed up like pirates, criminals, and bankers.
And the dogs in the dog costumes. Yeah, lots of those. How'd your kiddos do, Corey?
You know what, they did okay. I mean, like Signe, who's 2 months old, just was a little sleepy ladybug.
Lovely.
And Cal, he took the trick-or-treating pretty well, actually. He loved it. Yeah. I had to convince him to actually wear his costume, though. He kept taking off his hat, his witch hat.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of sneak it on him before I actually went up the stairs to say trick or treat. But he figured it out.
I heard he was polite at the door. Made you proud?
Yeah, he did. He would say thank you instead of trick or treat every time. So I had to be like, felt weird. I'd be like, don't say thank you, say trick or treat.
Wrong order.
Yeah, exactly.
We always ask, because I was sort of bumbly off the top there, but we always ask the morning after Halloween how many kids you got and what the best costume you saw at your door was last night anywhere in Manitoba. So we already heard from Morris today. Good morning, Morris, Manitoba. 186 kids at Tyler Johnston's store there. So he said that was pretty good for them. Really nice night out there for trick-or-treating. How's the weather going to be today?
Yeah, that spooky cloud is still hanging back. It's still going to be mostly cloudy today from the north with light snow in Churchill at this time, and we're still going to see cloudy conditions the south, although that would clear as we get into the morning. Some sunshine will peek through later in the day. Currently, Winnipeg, it is 2 degrees, mostly cloudy outside. That's what the condition will be for the most of the day, with light breeze developing this afternoon for the city. We warm up to a high of 7, though it's going to feel a bit chilly this morning with that wind chill factored in. And then we'll see partly clear skies tonight. In other regions, cooler up north, we're expecting some light snow. At Thompson is at -11 at this time, and then down south, mostly cloudy skies with sunny breaks in most areas, and we'll see highs between 7 and 8. Currently, Dauphin is at -4, Steinbach and Morris at -2. Winnipeg, 2 degrees. We'll warm up to a high of 7 later.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey, anything early on the commute?
No, nothing too early that I'm seeing to report right now. But if you do see something going on, if you're walking, biking, and driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Well, we flipped the calendar this morning. I know I literally did that at my home in the kitchen, flipped it over. November is National Diabetes Awareness Month. In Manitoba, diabetes, you likely know, or pre-diabetes, affects 28% of our population. And living with the disease comes with challenges. Our next guest is here to talk about what it's like to live with the disease for him and how technology has made diabetes manageable. Ray Desotel is a Winnipegger who lives with type 2 diabetes. Hi there, Ray.
Good morning, Marcy.
So how'd you find out, you had diabetes? Tell me a little bit about how old were you when you officially were diagnosed?
I would have been in my 40s at the time, so some 25 years ago or so. And we had been out to dinner at a friend's place. It was a Greek theme night and lots of good Greek food and, baklava and things like that. And got home and in the middle of the night started getting massive chest pains and abdominal pains. And was rushed to emergency, thinking it was heart attack or something like that. Turned out to be gallbladder. But after running some tests, the doctor came in and said that we're not sure what's causing this yet. He said, but have you taken your diabetic medication this morning? And I said, well, I'm not diabetic. And he said, oh, yes, you are.
Wow.
And that was it.
Wow. I'm saying, wow. What was your reaction?
Well, I was stunned. I really, everyone you knew about diabetes, but I had never put the two together. That I had been living with this for several years now. So,
can you tell us just sort of briefly what type 2 diabetes is?
Type 2 diabetes is insulin resistant. So what happens is as it goes on, your body becomes less able to absorb the insulin to remove the glucose from your system. So it takes more insulin to do that. And more and more insulin, because the cell is like a little thing with a bunch of little doors in it, and they're locked. And insulin unlocks those doors so the glucose can go into the cell and use for energy in that. So what happens is that the cells start being insulin resistant and less of those little doors open. So you have a bigger and bigger buildup of glucose in your system.
Tell me a little bit about what your life has been like managing the disease. And then also I'll ask you right away to maybe slide into how tech has helped you most recently, because we just did a medical column on how, our doctor that's regularly on with us said he thinks tech is a game changer for people who live with diabetes. So I wonder what it was like for you to manage it and how tech is now helping you.
Managing it is difficult. It's full time. It's 24/7. You can't just I'm going to let it slide. If you let it slide, your numbers go up right away, and they go up fast. There's no cure for diabetes. You can go in remission, you can control it, but there is no cure. Tech, game changer, Marcy. I've got a Dexicon G7 CGM, and my glucose is monitored 24/7. Every 5 minutes, there's a reading. It's a little, very tiny little thing I wear on the back of my arm, and it goes to my iPhone and my watch. I know what my blood sugar is in the middle of the night. I can wake up and check, the history. I can have one bite of food and tell you 5 minutes later what it's doing to my blood sugar, 2 hours later what it's doing to my blood sugar. So you can plan much better. You can know, I really can't have this food. If I have this food, I need to do this or I need to do that. It is a game changer. You can really take control of this disease.
Which is so great, right? Especially, I suspect, before, if you're out and about, you might always be wondering, or what would you rely on, like physical symptoms?
Well, you had to physical symptoms, or you had to do the finger prick. Take how many times a day do you do that? And that's not a fun thing, especially in cold weather. It hurts. And if you go on, we love to travel. You're in the middle of Europe, you're in Paris, or you're on a cruise somewhere, and you're pulling this thing out. Is it in your cabin? Is it in your luggage? You're on the plane. I just look at my watch and I know right away. It's just there. It's amazing.
What are some of the signs that someone might have diabetes that you think are lesser known that you'd like to share this morning around awareness?
Well, thirst. You're always thirsty. Tired is a big thing. If you ever go out for dinner with some people, and you get that tired feeling after you eat, but there are some people who look like they're just about to fall asleep. That's telling you right there that your blood sugar is way up there. More frequent urination, more weakness, a little bit more lethargic, a little bit more brain fog.
What does your diet look like now?
I have to watch carbs, especially carbs that react quickly, that they're on what we call the glycemic index, that turn into to glucose really fast, so which gives you a sugar dump. So you choose your carbs carefully, the ones that take a little longer to digest. The whole wheats instead of the white flour whenever you can, and things like that. So it's a balancing act.
Thanks for being up early and talking about this, Ray. Really important to a lot of people, and of course we have such high numbers of diabetes prevalent in our province. So really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcy, for shining light on this really important subject.
So November, Diabetes Awareness Month, and giving us some awareness this morning, Ray Desotel. He's a Winnipegger who lives with type 2 diabetes.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world. Staying on top of stories around the globe. And connected close to home. It's news you can trust. Delivered when you want and where you want. On Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1. Local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
6:22 a.m. is the time right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It's November 1st, day after Halloween. Hopefully you had a fun night if that was part of your life. 2 degrees in the city this morning of Winnipeg. Brandon is cloudy and 0, and Thompson, you're mostly cloudy and minus 11. Well, next on the program, state-sponsored hackers are increasingly targeting Canadian government networks. That's what a new report from the Communications Security Establishment, CSE, has found. For example, China has compromised at least 20 government networks in the past 5 years. Carmi Levy is here, tech analyst and journalist, for a closer look at all of this. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Marcy. So great to be with you.
So what does a cyber attack look like in this context, and what are the implications?
I think what's particularly frightening about this is that it doesn't look like much at all. It just looks like ordinary computing activity that is masquerading under the cover of night. So it could be just a message sitting in your inbox. If you're a Canadian government employee, it could be a request to book a meeting from your boss. It could be a budget spreadsheet that one of your colleagues wants you to look at. Of course, you click on it, you're in trouble. Could be a ransomware attack where it throws up a message saying your computer and its data have been locked. Pay this ransom, usually in cryptocurrency, to regain access to it. It could be a Canadian government employee going to pick up coffee for their colleagues, hopping onto the Wi-Fi at the coffee shop, but it's not really the legitimate Wi-Fi network. It's a foreign actor who then steals usernames and passwords. So it can take on many forms. Could be distributed denial of service attack as well, where the website gets taken down. But we don't tend to perceive them as such. We just think it's part of the ordinary digital landscape. We don't realize that it's a threat until it's too late.
What are the takeaways from the report I mentioned, the CSA's report on cybersecurity threats to this country?
Part of the report tells us stuff that we already knew. So we know that China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, the so-called Big Four, are continuing to target us as they have in each of the previous national cyber threat assessments that have been released every 2 years previously. So we knew that. What we didn't know is that India has now been added to that list. They're what's called a state of concern. They're targeting 6 separatists within Canada's borders using mass digital surveillance techniques against them to monitor their activities and use that for their intelligence activities. So it's troubling that, the threat that we thought was of a certain size and scope and from certain sources has grown rather significantly over the last couple of years. And even the actors who we knew were involved in this have gotten a lot more sophisticated, have really upped their game in the interim.
Can you elaborate on that? The actors we knew that are targeting Canada, what methods are they using to up their game?
So we know that China, of course, is the absolute apex predator when it comes to cyber insecurity. They lead the world in both scope and sophistication as well as aggressiveness. And so they're stealing intellectual property from networks. That's those 20 networks that that the report says that they're in. They're grabbing information from them. They're using espionage. They are they're using apps as well, embedded code to sort of stand over the shoulders of victims and sort of grab information from them. Russia using what the report calls digital warfare to destabilize adversaries, including Canada, especially since they invaded Ukraine. Every time Canada makes an announcement about support for Ukraine, shipping arms to Ukraine, anything like that, Russia seems to double down on those efforts, and the rate of attacks and the frequency and intensity of those attacks picks up. Iran using social engineering and customized spear phishing to target members of its diaspora who live in Canada, human rights activists, journalists, anyone who's sort of perceived as an enemy of the state, of the regime, they are being targeted on an individual basis.
I got to interject because we need to save some time for what we do about all of this, Carmi. There's 2 ways to answer that, if you would, like at the individual level, but also the Canadian government agencies. How can they better protect us and protect the systems, of course, from the cyber threats?
I mean, it certainly starts with money. In the last federal budget, the government allocated just over $900 million over the next 5 years for improving our national cybersecurity posture, which is a really good start, but that's all it is, a start. And money can only get you so far. You need to ensure that those resources are available to Canadian citizens, Canadian businesses, and Canadian government agencies on the ground so that when they perceive a threat or as part of their regular planning and operations, that they can reach out, access those resources, and use them in the day-to-day, take advantage of them because money isn't going to go as far. So we need to make sure that, I often call it the Manhattan Project of cybersecurity, that we're prioritizing this and that the government, in every announcement that it makes, ensures that cybersecurity is part of that narrative, that we are not losing sight of it in much the same way that, we talk about the territories that we're on. Whenever we start with an announcement, we have to incorporate cybersecurity into that conversation and make sure that it isn't left behind, because right now that's not the case, and unfortunately for most Canadians it's perceived as an afterthought.
You started by saying this is hiding everywhere, an email that's sitting in your inbox, an invite from your boss, that you think is from your boss. So at the individual level, any advice? I mean, I feel like we have a lot of these conversations. It's just that it's getting overwhelming for folks, I think. So what's the most important thing that you would say to keep us safe from threats that people might want to think about?
Vigilance. Recognize that even we play a part in this very geopolitical, national, global issue. So that by simply making sure that we tighten our, for example, policy process, use different passwords for different systems instead of the same one across the board, that can go a long way toward contributing to stronger national resistance to this kind of global threat. If we disavow ourselves of the notion of having to reply to every message that hits our inbox, if we pause a little bit and do some due diligence to verify the source, make sure that we recognize those email addresses and those phone numbers before we choose to interact with it, that can also reduce our potential of becoming a victim, and then by extension, Canada's potential of becoming a victim. So the sad reality is, we're Canadians, everybody loves us, but we're increasingly being targeted, both on a national and individual level. We've got to change our behaviors around that. My
blood pressure just went up, and I just checked. I have 14,000 emails in my box.
Well, you don't have to answer them all, so that's a good start.
All right, Carmi, thank you very much for walking us through this report today. Appreciate it.
Appreciate being here, Marcy. Thank you.
That's Carmi Levy, a technology analyst and journalist. We reached him in London, Ontario. I am Marcy Marcusa. You are listening to Information Radio live from downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube this morning as well. Let's have a look at what's coming up in business news here. Phil DeMont's going to be joining us. Canada's economy stalled in August. So we're going to talk about Canada's landing and whether or not it's getting a bit bumpier, because yesterday we were talking about the U.S.'s soft landing. In addition, Phil's going to cover some oil projects that appear to be getting off the ground, so he'll walk us through what those are. If you have anything to report on the morning commute, we'd love to hear from you this morning anywhere in Manitoba. 788-3093 if you're spotting any problems out there is the commuter line. You can touch base with Corey. And we're starting to get you writing in about trick-or-treating last night and what it looked like in your corner of Manitoba. I was mentioning Morris, 186 kids. Allison Moore, writing from Winnipeg, her Earl Grey neighborhood, she said had about 80 to 100 kids. It was a busy night, and she said so many polite kids. And Heather Neufeld was lonely in Sandy Hook. She didn't get any trick-or-treaters. You can weigh in on my Facebook page. It acts as a show page. It's Marcy Marcusa on Facebook. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's 2 degrees. It's November, and November begins the same way October ended. We're still above normal. A high today of 7 under a cloudy sky. The cost of reopening Portage and Main to pedestrians is on the rise. A new city report says it will cost $21 million, up from an approved budget of $13 million. Only one construction company bid on the work, and that bid came in higher than expected. The work is supposed to be complete by July. City Council voted to reopen the intersection after an earlier report said it would cost $73 million to repair the walkway below Portage and Main. A lawsuit filed this week alleges negligence by staff at Health Sciences Centre led to or contributed to the death of a teenage girl last year. The 17-year-old entered the Winnipeg Hospital's emergency department after expressing suicidal thoughts to a school counselor. The lawsuit says hospital staff ignored the girl's request to be admitted in the hospital's mental health ward and that a nurse who cared for her was dismissive of her mental health state. The girl attempted suicide and was declared brain dead a few days after entering the hospital. The lawsuit says the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority is liable in the death. None of the allegations have been tested in court. 2 Winnipeggers have been named as suspects in a shooting in BC at the home of a popular Punjabi singer in September. One is in custody, but the other, they believe, is no longer in the country. Liam Britton has the story now from Vancouver.
AP Dillon, performing at last year's Junos, has filled arenas across Canada and toured the world with his music. But in September, a violent scene at his home in Colwood, outside Victoria. Video posted by Indian media outlets show a person firing 14 shots into a home, while 2 cars burn. No one was hurt. Mounties say it was targeted, and now they are naming 2 people they accuse of being responsible. Abjit Kingra, a 25-year-old from Winnipeg, was arrested for discharge of a firearm with intent and arson. He was arrested in Ontario, where he made a court appearance. 23-year-old Vikram Sharma, last known to live in Winnipeg, is subject of a warrant for the same crimes, but he is now thought to be in India. Indian media reports that a member of a gang based in that country claimed responsibility for the shooting. Mounties have told CBC they can't comment on that. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
The City of Thompson is relinquishing ambulance services to Shared Health. The Northern City's local firefighter and emergency department has been providing ambulance service in exchange for provincial funding. But the union representing first responders says the government's providing the city the same resources since 2019, despite an annual increase of call volume. Eric Campbell is the acting union president.
About 90% of our responses are EMS related, still something that that the city is aware of. And at some point, we've reached a breaking point where we are unable to do both. We have to pick and choose. And the city opted to follow their legal obligations based under the Municipalities Act, which is that they have to provide fire protective services for their citizens.
Shared Health will assume full responsibility for ambulances in Thompson starting in February. Well, heading into the final weekend of the U.S. presidential election campaign, both candidates are focusing their efforts on a handful of key swing states, including Nevada. In Las Vegas last night, Jennifer Lopez was among the celebrities appearing at a Kamala Harris rally.
Right now, we are on the brink of an election that demands a choice between backwards and forwards, a choice between the past and the future, a choice between divided and united.
At the same time, Donald Trump appeared at a rally in the Las Vegas suburbs talking about his success as a candidate.
I came in first in 50 states. Think of it. For the nomination. First in 50 states. And then we went on to win the presidency of the United States. And then we won it a second time, but I guess we're going to have to do it a third time.
Donald Trump repeating the proven lie that he won the 2020 presidential election. He also called Election Day next Tuesday Liberation Day. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Winnipeg trick-or-treaters may have found Halloween to be doubly sweet this year.
Happy Halloween, happy Diwali.
The annual celebration of all things scary fell on the same day as the South Asian Festival of Lights. Diwali is an annual festival. It's celebrated by more than 1 billion people every year, and it represents the victory of good over evil. Sachin Tade and his wife Rashmi say they want their sons to understand and respect both traditions.
The beauty of living in Winnipeg or in Canada is we have so many cultures around here, and celebrating them together, it makes sense, right? So you understand what the other people do that day.
The Tade family say it was fun to experience both cultures coming together. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
So, Heather, so far we've got a lot of kids out last night because of the weather.
I'm hearing that, yeah, because it was a mild night, wasn't it?
Yeah, across a lot of Manitoba. So Jeremy Remillard wrote in and said 26 in Booth. That's 33% of last year, so a bit of a change there. I was mentioning Earl Grey had a lot. St. Boniface, Roseanne Smiley said she had 84 kids. And Eric Reedman Parker said Ridgewood West was hopping. 130 to 150 kids said it was like a street party on the Crescent. A lot of folks were posting out of running out of candy, though, he said.
Yeah.
Janine Legal didn't tell me the neighborhood she's in, and I wish she would because Janine said 254 kids.
Wow.
That's a big number. And finally, Anne wrote into us saying it was a pleasant nightmare on Elm Street, which is in River Heights. I ran out of candy at 7:15. Swarms of happy, polite kids and adults. A wonderful evening, but not sure how many kids there. So, I love doing this. I don't know why. I just love hearing all the neighborhoods shouted out too in the morning, So we'll keep that going for the morning and we'll see, how many kids. Usually the winners are where, Heather? I'm trying to remember. Lindenwood sometimes.
When you say the winners, the who had the most kids?
The top number, yes.
I can tell you that some of our colleagues are saying they had a lot of kids.
Oh, yeah?
And like whether you're in Riverview or wherever, Wolseley, lots of kids.
Oh, yeah, Riverview up does really well. So does Riverbend up on North Main sometimes. So let's hear from you this morning. What's your neighborhood or what's your town or community and how many kids last night at the door? Also, bonus points if you want to post a picture and tell us what the cutest patootie costume you saw was as well. Or maybe the best costume. It was maybe elaborate or gory. You can post all this on Facebook. You can email us, radio893@cbc.ca. Thank you, Heather. It's time for Abby to join us. Hello.
Hi there, Marcy. It's 2 degrees in Winnipeg. Cloudy skies outside. We're going to see mostly cloudy conditions today with light breeze this afternoon. We do warm up to a high of 7 later. And then for tonight, we see some cloudy skies roll in, partly clear as that tries to clear up as we get into the night period, crossing over into Saturday, though the temperatures will drop to around -5 overnight. Brandon currently at 0. We'll see clouds clear by late afternoon. For the high of the day, you warm up to a high of 8, and then for tonight, some fog patches would develop and temperatures will be dropping to around -7. Let's now move up north. Thompson currently at -11. Mostly cloudy skies we're seeing. Later in the day, we'll see a mix of sun and clouds with the highs near -2 for that region. And then as we get late into the evening, temperatures will be dropping back to around -9, dropping all the way to -12 with a wind chill factored in. Further north in Churchill, -8 at this time. Cloudy skies you're seeing. Today you should anticipate light snow showers this afternoon and a steady temperature around -7. So you won't really climb much from the -8 you are at this time. Duffin is at -5 and clear at this time. Forecast calls for cloudy conditions this morning. That should be clearing as you get into the morning. You see a mix of sun and clouds with a high around 8 degrees. Gimli at 2, cloudy conditions. The forecast for that region, mainly cloudy with a high around 8 degrees. Steinbach -2 and clear. Today would actually start cloudy in the morning, and then you see some clear conditions as you get into the day. Breezy southwest and a high of 8. And for Morris, we're going to see temperatures around climbing to around 8 degrees, but for now, you are currently sitting at 2 degrees, and the forecast calls for mainly cloudy conditions today. So across the province, we're looking at a mix of sun and clouds with temperatures warming up to, chilly mornings, and then as we get chilly morning lows, and right now we are currently 2 degrees in Winnipeg. We're heading for a high of 7 later.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, the commute, what's going on?
Really quiet commute so far. I haven't heard of any major issues, but if you see something, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, not all of the engagement online that we get when you engage with us on Facebook is, photos from your lives. Also, some of you apparently are watching us on YouTube, and not just you, but your animals. We got this series of pictures. We're going to put them up on YouTube so you can enjoy this. This is from Jennifer Stratmiller. She wrote in yesterday, Happy Halloween, and she's got these photos of her cat watching us on television, but all you see is the silhouette of her cat, and it's almost like the cat, I don't know how long the cat was sitting there, but at one point the cat tilts its head, and it looks like it's got its little head on my shoulder. At another point, the weather map is up, and Abby's delivering the weather, and the cat is got its paw right on Manitoba as if oh, this is where it's going to rain. It looks like the cat almost looks like it's standing at a map like Riley or something.
We keep catnip in the studio to attract more cat viewers, actually. So that's how it works.
Apparently it's working. I don't know the name of Jennifer's cat, but thanks for sending in these cute little shots to us. All right, it's time to move to business news now. Phil DeMont joins us. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Marcy.
So Canada's economy stalled in August. Yesterday we were talking about the U.S.'s soft landing. Is Canada's landing getting a bit bumpier?
Yeah, it has been for a while. Thursday, Statistics Canada reported that the country's economic growth flatlined in August. That's after 3 of the previous 4 months we had positive growth. As a result, optimism that our short-term trajectory is on the upward trends kind of evaporated. CIBC says the third quarter growth appears to be tracking below the Bank of Canada's already feeble 1% estimate. Now, the economy did endure that national rail labor stoppage in August. That was going to hurt the numbers, but the country's weakness in the economy spread into manufacturing and utility, at least in August. BMO pegs the third quarter numbers at about 1%. That's a big drop compared to the previous quarter figure, above 2%. So it's about half of where it was for the second 3 months of the year. The American economy going the other direction. The U.S. GDP set to expand 3% in the third quarter, 3 times the Canadian number. Now, one reason behind the different fortunes of the two economies, believe it or not, Canada actually has a history of being hard-nosed in wringing out inflation, high inflation. The American Central Bank tends to worry more about the overall economy. As a result, in the past couple of years, the bank hiked interest rates fairly aggressively. That got rid of inflation. It's at that 2% target, but it stifled economic growth, which you would expect, and that's what's happened. One bright spot in the StatsCan numbers, the preliminary figure for September, has the country's GDP expanding once again, but not enough to overcome what's kind of been a bit of a plateau for the past couple of months.
To another story, some oil projects appear to be getting off the ground. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, 2 areas come to mind. Newfoundland's White Rose Field. Cenovus said on Thursday that its massive offshore oil production and storage platform is on its way back from Ireland. It was getting some work done over there, but as a result, the company's on track to pump the first oil out of that offshore field 2026. That was always the timetable. Husky Energy, they originally owned the project, but they stopped the work on White Rose back in 2020. Cenovus bought Husky the next year and said it would restart the Newfoundland field after the provincial government changed how he taxed oil. Cenovus says the expansion is costing about $700 million a year, but the extra production should net it more than $1 billion in additional revenue. Then there's Trans Mountain Pipeline. Long-suffering pipeline actually had its first operational quarter ending September 30th, resulting in more Canadian oil sands oil getting to market. That in turn has reduced the price difference between conventional oil and the amount that oil sands producers get for their oil. In 2023, the difference was about $19. So heavy oil producers got about $19 left per barrel than conventional producers. That number is expected to drop to less than $15 this year and $13 next year. It'll never go to zero because oil sands oil always trades at a discount to regular crude because it's harder to refine.
Let's go straight to markets next, Phil. What's going on with the numbers?
Yeah, right now, positive day in Europe. Germany, France, UK, all up by more than 0.5%. The Nikkei in Japan, though, extended its losses from Thursday to today, down 2.5%. Oil up $1.39, $70.65 a barrel. Canadian dollar down, but only marginally so, trading at 71.78 cents U.S.
All right, Phil, have a great weekend. Thank you.
Same to you, Marcy.
That is Phil DeMont filling in for Crystalie Ramlichan with our business news. It is 6:45 a.m. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for spending time with us this Friday morning. Hopefully your week's gone well. Hopefully your month was great. We flipped the calendar this morning, November 1st. It's 2 degrees in Winnipeg, and it is calm out there. Well, coming up next on the program, let's look at a story that has been developing. Once again, the federal NDP is trying to rally support for a new piece of legislation that would make denying the residential school system and its impacts punishable by law. The bill is being championed by Winnipeg NDP MP Leah Gazan. Gazan says the residential school system was genocide designed to wipe out Indigenous culture, and that any effort to downplay, deny, or justify it is cruel and hateful. Kimberly Murray is a special interlocutor for missing children in unmarked graves and burial sites. Murray released a report this week calling for action from government. She says children who died and were buried at residential schools are not missing. They're, quote, victims of enforced disappearance, end quote. Speaking first in an Indigenous language, this is Murray yesterday in Ottawa, talking about making denialism of those facts punishable by law.
Sego, Seguego, Kimberly Murray, Yangatskanyagahaka, Ni Negana Sitage. In my final report that I released earlier this week, I noted that despite the well-documented reality that thousands of Indigenous children died at Indian residential schools, and that many children are buried in unmarked and mass graves, some Canadians have mounted a concerted effort to attack the truths of survivors, Indigenous families, and communities. And they are inciting hate towards them by claiming that there are no missing and disappeared children and no unmarked or mass graves in this country. These attacks are an attack on the memory of the lost ones, are hateful, and a continuation of the genocidal process against Indigenous people. Denial of the truth about the harms of Indian residential schools has a profound impact on survivors, their families, and communities. To be heard and believed and to have the truth be visible and acknowledged is a fundamental right and a prerequisite to healing. Denialists deny facts, attack the credibility of victims, and portray victims as oppressive perpetrators while characterizing themselves as the victims. This re-victimizes those who have already suffered and incites hate against Indigenous peoples. The goal is to maintain settler impunity and to protect perpetrators and deny the genocide committed against Indigenous people. Obligation 37 of the 42 obligations identified in my final report is that the federal government must amend the criminal code, making it an offense to willfully promote hatred against Indigenous people by condoning, denying, downplaying, or justifying the Indian residential school system, or by misrepresenting facts relating to it. Implementing this obligation would be consistent with Canada's commitments under the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Canada has a responsibility to uphold Article 15 of the Declaration that enshrines Indigenous peoples' right to dignity and diversity of their cultures, traditions, histories, and requires states to take effective measures to combat prejudice and eliminate discrimination and to promote tolerance, understanding, and good relations between Indigenous people and all other segments of society. I'm here today to support Bill C-413 and urge the government to pass the bill to put a stop to the hatred against survivors, their families, and communities, and to protect and honor the memory of the victims and the survivors of Indian residential schools, and to send a message that Canada is committed to upholding human rights and rejects the spread of hatred in this country. Thank you.
We were listening there to Kimberly Murray, who spoke yesterday, the special interlocutor for missing children, in unmarked graves and burial sites. Now, she was speaking in Ottawa about an NDP motion to criminalize any denialism of the residential school experience, and the bill is being championed by Winnipeg NDP MP Leah Gazan. It is 11 minutes now to 7 o'clock. On 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Behind the glass in the control room today, Kevin Ipatebo, Corey Funke, and Abby Adiyemi. Thanks for joining all of us. Heather Wells in our news center with next headlines before 7 o'clock. Right now, though, let's talk about something that is making national news this morning. Our colleagues at CBC Marketplace have gone back undercover to follow up on an investigation that revealed a number of accessibility issues for travelers on Air Canada flights. Co-host Travis Danraj joins us now with more. Good morning, Travis.
Good morning.
So remind us to start with what Marketplace uncovered when you first went undercover, which was last year on these Air Canada flights.
Right. So some of these stories were pretty shocking. We went with hidden cameras rolling from Toronto to Charlottetown with a woman named Alessia Di Virgilio who uses a wheelchair. And even before we got on any plane, we documented what was a very confusing, complicated process for Alessia to get approvals to fly. Then when we were on the plane, there were more issues. We documented a staff member who openly admitted that he didn't have the required training to operate a key piece of equipment, a lift, and he hadn't had that training in 7 years. A lift also, this moment we documented being dropped on Alessia's head. and a moment when she's being transferred when her ventilator tube was detached. So very scary stuff, emotionally exhausting, as you can imagine, for her. And she also said that she felt like her safety was compromised. Here's more from Alessia.
To say the word terrifying just doesn't fully encapture how you feel. In some way, you're glad that you're sitting on your chair and that you're alive and you're breathing. But in other ways, you feel like someone just threw you in your chair. I had felt the lift hit me on the head.
Okay, so after our initial investigation aired, Air Canada apologized and gave Alessia a $2,000 travel coupon for future travel on the airline. It was also fined $22,500 by the Canadian Transportation Agency for a lack of refresher training for the specific employee and in this incident. The Minister of Transport at the time, federally, summoned all of the airlines to Ottawa to discuss improving accessible air travel as well in this first summit that they had on this issue.
So I know Air Canada then promised to make changes, and that is what you test in this episode. We're talking about the new one, if they're following through. What can you tell us about what you found about the answer to that question this time around?
That's right, because, I mean, this issue was in the spotlight a year ago, so we wanted to make sure, okay, let's see how they're doing. That plan, which they put out very publicly, included better staff training, investment in more equipment like lifts, a commitment to board passengers with disabilities who need assistance first and seat them at the front of the cabin that they booked. Air Canada said, and this on their website, that they want to make travel easier and more comfortable for customers with disabilities. And to give credit where credit's due, there have been improvements, but there are still issues. We went this time in our test with a gentleman named Brock Richardson. He's a Paralympian, he has cerebral palsy, and he uses a wheelchair. And we flew from Toronto to Fredericton and back. Now in Toronto, he was boarded on the airplane first, and there was a lift available at Pearson International Airport. However, when we got to Fredericton, there was no lift available, and on one of the flights, he was not boarded first. The reason why, we're talking a lot about these lifts in the episode tonight and right now is because they're really key here. I mean, they move the passenger from their seat to their wheelchair and back, and if it's not available, then staff have to do this manually, and it's sometimes where accidents can happen. Air Canada said when we interviewed them that they, that they were having there were issues with kind of getting more of these lifts because they were in Australia. There was a global supply chain issue, and they ordered 27 of them. Now they have them, but they didn't at the time when we filmed this. And it was also during a moment when one of these transfers was happening that an Air Canada staff member told Brock that his attendant, who travels with him everywhere and knows him intimately well, had to leave the plane. Take a listen.
I've never had someone tell me that my attendant can't stay with me.
We got it from management not too long ago. And they just inform us if they're not assisting or anything like this, then we have to ask them to deboard the aircraft.
So this back and forth went on for some time. Brock got quite frustrated. Eventually, the attendant is allowed to stay. But the point that he makes is, why was this even a conversation? Why was she asked to leave the aircraft during this most vulnerable moment? And he worries that, yes, she was allowed to stay, but what if this happens to somebody else and the attendant has to leave?
Mm-hmm. Now, I understand last time you looked into this story, Travis, that the Air Canada wouldn't do an interview on camera.
Right.
What happened this time with Marketplace when you requested it?
So they did an on-camera interview with us this time, and we met with Tom Stevens, the company's Vice President of Customer Experience Strategy in Ottawa, at that summit that the then minister, called the first National Air Accessibility Summit. He did answer many of our questions, but he also said that he would have to go back and look into some of the specifics for issues that we raised. And I'll be honest, getting answers from Air Canada for our team was somewhat of a lengthy process. It took more than 4 months in some cases to get answers, and there are still outstanding questions that Air Canada simply has not responded to. One particular incident, and this one, you got to kind of follow the ball on this one because it's confusing in terms of the communication. One of our producers captured a moment where an Air Canada manager appeared to be filming Brock's transfer on their phone without his consent. So we asked the airline about this. They said, no, it's not our policy to do that. Sometimes we'll take a picture, but it's to make sure the mobility device is fine, and we'll do that, without anybody in it. They said that they would investigate. Then they eventually said, yeah, a photo was taken, but it was only of his empty wheelchair. We asked for the photo. They didn't send it. Then Air Canada got in touch with Brock directly, leaving Marketplace out of the communication. And they said that they apologized to Brock. They offered him a $1,000 coupon for future travel, and they sent him pictures of his empty wheelchair.
Just in our last minute here, what happens next? How's Brock feeling about his experience as well?
So Brock, obviously, a bit of emotional roller coaster. Air Canada told us that there's now a lift in Fredericton, thankfully. They're working on further improvements to training and equipment, but change takes time. And Brock, said that he really wanted to go on this journey. He wants to continue to fly, and he wanted to go on this journey with us to continue to shine a spotlight on this issue, because getting from point A to point B for Canadians like him can sometimes be very complicated.
Appreciate you making time for us here in Winnipeg to be on the show today. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
As Travis Danraj, there's a whole lot more, of course, you can see in the story that airs tonight on CBC Marketplace. You can check it out at 8 o'clock. You can also watch it anytime on YouTube and CBC Gem. Let's get to our local Winnipeg headlines, Manitoba news, and updates from Heather Wells, who's with us. Hi there.
Hi there. Well, a lawsuit filed this week alleges negligence by staff at the Health Sciences Centre led to or contributed to the death of a teenage girl last year. The 17-year-old entered the Winnipeg Hospital's emergency department after expressing suicidal thoughts to a school counselor. We'll hear about what happened. And 2 Winnipeggers have been named as suspects in a BC shooting at the home of a chart-topping Punjabi singer. No one was hurt in the September shooting, but 2 Winnipeggers are the suspects, and we'll have that story as well coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
2 degrees in Winnipeg. The high today is going to be 7 and a mainly cloudy day ahead. Pretty similar to yesterday, maybe less sun. On the morning commute, we did get a call from Ben on the line, the commuter line. He said emergency vehicles are blocking the curb lane on westbound Logan at Isabel. This is right at the foot of the Slarabchuk Bridge. So things are apparently getting pretty backed up, according to Ben. Call us if you have any updates on that or other areas in the province where the commute's affected, and we should pass it along. You can call us at 788-3093. Corey's on the other end of the line. Well, when is it too old to be a romantic lead in a movie? That question's causing a stir in Hollywood. It's the subject of an age discrimination lawsuit. We'll ask the public that question ahead of an upcoming Christmas movie season, and often we have those movies shooting all around Manitoba, of course. In addition, the Day of the Dead begins on Saturday. It's time to celebrate and honor loved ones who've passed away. We're going to hear how the local Mexican Association is marching the long-standing Mexican tradition. So that conversation's coming up after 7 o'clock. And then at 10 to 8, you might have been following some of the news of recent Listeria food recalls. It has some Manitobans concerned about the food that is lining our grocery store shelves. But how concerned should you be about the bacteria? We're going to give you a bit of a 101 on Listeria. So that's all coming up. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Remember, we're still gathering how many kids you had at the door last night, favorite costumes. You can weigh in on Facebook. Right now, the World Report is next.
Today on The Current.
It's not easy to ask for something so basic as food.
I'm Susan Ormiston. Canadians are using food banks in record numbers, and One Health Institute says it has a solution. Fixing a maximum price for a variety of healthy foods. How to tackle hunger and health, coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The drive for votes is reaching a frenzied pace in the U.S. The presidential election is Tuesday. Both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are crisscrossing the country. They are concentrating on battleground states that could determine the outcome. At a rally in Arizona last night, Trump repeated claims Democrats are engaging in election fraud.
They want to cheat on elections by signing these people up, and they are trying to sign people up. They're trying to sign people up that don't even know what country they're in, okay?
Harris held a rally of her own in neighboring Nevada, adding more superstar power, with Jennifer Lopez joining her on stage in Las Vegas.
Right now, we are on the brink of an election that demands a choice between backwards and forwards, a choice between the past and the future, a choice between divided and united.
Georgia is another of those crucial swing states. Support from Black communities there is critical to both presidential candidates. My World Report co-host John Northcott has the story from there.
Lunchtime at Savannah State University, the oldest historically Black university in Georgia. Freshmen and sophomore students grab a bite and sit outside in the sunshine. This is their first election as voters, and they're looking for change. Chaz Ferguson is 18.
Our ancestors went through a lot. Slavery, they went through a lot for us to get this freedom. They didn't do all that for nothing.
Joe Biden won Georgia in 2020 by just 0.2%. With over 30% of the state's population who identify as Black, it's an absolutely essential demographic for the Democrats. Journalist Tia Mitchell co-hosts the podcast Politically Georgia.
Black voters are the backbone of the Democratic Party.
But there are concerns this year about Black voter turnout. And the polls suggest some Black Georgians are warming to Trump's message.
If I said I understood that, I would be lying.
Democratic organizer Felicia Vereen admits it's a challenge.
But I really think that they believe that in the past he has helped their businesses, he has helped them to make more money.
But for the young students at Savannah State, though, the choice is clear. Jasmine Hall and Gabrielle Thomas are both 19. They're for Kamala Harris, not Donald Trump.
As a college student, I shouldn't vote for him. And as a woman, he's taking away the abortions and student loans.
It's such a long list. Right. It's a very long list.
And then he's racist.
In an election this tight, as people weigh who best understands their history and their hopes, a few thousand Georgia voters could decide for the whole country who will be the next president. John Northcott, CBC News, Savannah, Georgia.
And John will be reporting and hosting from this key state until after Election Day. Stay tuned for special editions of World Report in Georgia tomorrow and Sunday. A new law goes into effect today in Texas. It requires hospitals to collect data on patients' citizenship status. It's part of a mandate from the state's Republican governor. Greg Abbott wants to know exactly how much Texans are paying to treat undocumented migrants. But the new rule is raising concerns about healthcare access and privacy. Freelance reporter Tony Waterman has more from Austin.
Every person seeking care at a Texas hospital will now be asked if they're in the U.S. legally or not. The mandate doesn't require people to answer, but some, like immigration lawyer David Donati, fear it will scare people away from seeking health care that they need.
People may have to make a rational calculus of, well, I'm experiencing this set of symptoms. I might otherwise go to a hospital, but the risk of some kind of immigration enforcement will cause those people to delay care.
The Texas Hospital Association says the mandate will not change patient care. As a border state, Texas has one of the largest migrant populations in the country. It also has the highest rate of uninsured residents, legal and illegal, costing the state more than $3 billion a year. Republicans say Texans shouldn't be footing the bill for the Biden administration's, quote, open border policy. But Democratic lawmakers like Al Green say the new law is nothing more than a political stunt ahead of an election where immigration is a top issue.
Under federal law, hospitals must provide emergency care regardless of one's immigration status.
Hospitals have to start handing over the data to state officials in March or risk losing certain state funding. Tony Waterman for CBC News, Austin, Texas.
Police in Orlando have arrested a 17-year-old boy in connection with a late-night shooting. It happened in the downtown at a public Halloween celebration. Eric Smith is the city's police chief.
At this time, we are aware of 8 total victims. 2 are now deceased. 6 other individuals who were shot were transported to ORMC for further treatment. Those victims are currently in stable condition.
Police say those taken to hospital are from 19 to 39 years old. There's no word on the motive for the attack. The number of people killed in Spain's catastrophic floods has climbed to 202. Rescue crews are still searching for dozens of other people. The areas in the east were the hardest hit. They're now cleaning up. Heavy equipment moves mounds of wrecked cars piled up by the raging floodwaters. The government has announced close to $300 million of aid for those affected. Earlier in the week, torrential rain caused Spain's worst flooding in 40 years. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith faces a major test of her leadership this weekend. Party members gathered in Red Deer will vote on whether they still support Smith. She won the party's leadership with 54% of the vote 2 years ago. But as Terry Reith tells us, some say she'll have to do much better this weekend if she's going to silence her critics.
I'm pleased to rise and move first reading for Bill 24.
Alberta's governing Conservative Party has been busy this week, introducing a flurry of bills, including the Alberta Bill of Rights and transgender legislation. Political scientist Lori Williams says it's aimed at shoring up support.
Their primary focus right now, and has been for some time, is the annual general meeting, and particularly the leadership review that's going to be happening this weekend.
Smith came to power with a razor-thin majority 2 years ago after factions within the party pushed out Jason Kenney. Williams says the Premier now faces a balancing act, keeping the party's hard right supporters on board while broadening her appeal to all Albertans.
If it's a strong showing, I think she can sort of have a bit of insulation for a period of time.
But former party president and Smith staffer Erica Barudis believes the Premier will come out on top.
Anyone that's going to come out and say, here's the magic number, is pulling that out of the air. I think, the Premier's going to do probably better than I think what maybe people expect.
Alberta Conservatives will also be voting on a wide range of policy resolutions. One calls on the province to abandon all net zero targets and recognize CO2 as a foundational nutrient for all life on Earth. Several others are focused on gender issues. Terry Reith, CBC News, Edmonton.
Air Canada promised to become more accessible. That commitment came after our colleagues at Marketplace investigated issues for travelers with disabilities. The team went back undercover to see if Air Canada is living up to their promise. Travis Danraj has the story.
In Zone 1 are invited to board.
Brock Richardson is a two-time Paralympian who's navigating an Air Canada flight from Toronto to Fredericton with his wheelchair.
I have cerebral palsy.
Brock saw a report last year about major issues with accessible air travel in Canada. Air Canada promised to do better, but during Richardson's trip, there was no lift at Fredericton Airport, and he wasn't always boarded before other passengers, as Air Canada said would happen.
There is some vulnerability that goes on when you're being transferred.
Before staff transferred him from his seat, his support person was asked to leave the plane because she wasn't going to physically assist.
She knows my every need, every second of every day. They don't.
After some back and forth, she's allowed to stay. Our producer also witnessed an Air Canada manager appearing to record Richardson on a phone during a transfer without his permission. Tom Stevens is the company's VP of Customer Experience Strategy.
I cannot confirm whether that has happened or not. We need to investigate further. It's not Air Canada policy to do that. We do take photos occasionally of mobility aids that are being stowed to ensure that there's no damage.
The company says only Richardson's empty wheelchair was photographed and offer him a $1,000 coupon to show their regret for his overall experience. They add they're working on better training and more equipment. Travis Danraj, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcuso. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on this November 1st. Thanks for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. This is CBC. Pretty decent day ahead out there. Abby's in with our forecast in a moment. A little less sunny than yesterday, but otherwise pretty similar, actually. This hour on the program, coming up at 10 to 8, let's talk about your food. From frozen waffles being recalled in Canada to plant-based milks facilities not doing enough to curb contamination. This hour, we're going to talk more about Listeria and some recent recalls that have happened. So that's just before 8. Also at 7:40, can't speak this morning. Are Hallmark actors, there it is, too old? That's a contentious topic. Some fans are asking the question after a Hallmark exec allegedly said they needed to find replacement actors for specifically one actor in her 40s. Too old to be a romantic lead. That's a good talker. CBC's Jim Agapito went out to ask their public what you think of that, the age of romantic leads, especially since so many Hallmark movies are shot here in Manitoba. So stay tuned. That's coming up at 7:40. Right now, Heather Wells joins us live from our news center with your headlines.
Good morning. Well, the cost of reopening Portage and Main to pedestrians is on the rise. A new city report says it's going to cost $21 million. That's up from an approved budget of $13 million. We're going to hear why coming up. As well, a lawsuit filed this week alleges negligence by staff at the Health Sciences Centre led to or contributed to the death of a teenage girl last year. Our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby does have more details on the forecast as promised. Abby?
Yeah, good morning. Across the province, we're going to see a mix of sun and clouds with temperatures warming up from this chilly morning lows that we currently are experiencing across board. Winnipeg at 2 degrees right now. Today's forecast calls for mostly cloudy conditions with light breeze picking up from the south later in the afternoon, and we'll see highs around 7. Feeling cooler this morning. Some people will feel the chill outside. And then tonight we'll see the skies try to clear for a bit before some clouds would roll back in, though it's going to be a calm breeze we'll experience then. Cooler temperatures up north with cloudy skies and light snow in the forecast. Thompson at -12 now. Churchill will see light snow later in the day at -8 currently. Down south, we're seeing mostly cloudy skies, light breeze, and highs between 7 and 8. That's the forecast for today. Right now, Brandon at 1, Dauphin at -3, and then we're seeing -2s for Steinbach, Gimli, and the Morris area. But we're heading for a high of 7 in Winnipeg today.
Okay, we are taking advantage of the fact that we're on YouTube with a little fun. So today is not only November, Abby, it's also Friday.
Friday, yeah.
Are you looking at our YouTube stream right now?
Happy Friday.
Dancing dogs. Yep, that's what we're about when we're giving you the happy Friday. I don't know how they manipulate the dogs to dance like John Travolta, and but I like it. I'm all about it. Yeah. Corey Funk, what's going on in traffic?
There's still an issue, and right at the foot of the Slaw Ribchuck Bridge, right where Isabel meets Logan, the lights are flashing red in all directions due to a multi-vehicle collision there. So you want to treat that as a 4-way stop. All the northbound lanes currently are actually blocked on Isabel heading towards over the Slaw Ribchuck Bridge there. Also heard from Ben that westbound Logan, he said probably about 15 minutes ago, he phoned and said that westbound Logan, the curb lane is blocked by some emergency vehicles. So that may have changed, but just heads up there as well if you're heading westbound on Logan. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, up first this half hour on the program, if you see some sugar skull faces out there today or maybe some marigold, that is because Day of the Dead starts tomorrow. Also known as El Dia de los Muertos in Mexico, it's long believed that on this day, the souls of loved ones who've passed on come back to Earth to visit. The long-standing Mexican tradition brings a rich history that will be celebrated at the Forks here in Winnipeg. Gabby Landa is up early this morning and with us via Zoom, Public Relations Officer with Mexican Association. Thank you so much for being on the show this morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. So there may be some listeners that are not familiar with Day of the Dead, so we should start there just for those that don't know. What is it all about?
Well, it started, it has its roots in ancient indigenous beliefs, like especially the Aztec and other Mesoamerican cultures that saw death as a natural, continuous part of life. So for them, death was not, an end, but a transformation and a return to Earth. And then, these beliefs merge with Catholic traditions brought by the Spanish, shaping Dia de Muertos, Day of the Dead, into a celebration that honors the souls of those who have passed. So now we celebrate November 1st and November 2nd. November 1st, we celebrate the little one that passed away, and November 2nd, we celebrate the adults.
What is the tone of the celebration? I know it's full of color, but it also has, obviously, you're remembering people who have passed away. How do you describe the tone of everything?
I believe the pain never goes away. We're always grieving, right? But rather than fearing death, Mexicans view this as a time to remember, celebrate, and connect with loved ones who are no longer here. Like the holiday serves as a bridge between the living and the dead, where families create altars, prepare their favorite foods of the deceased, and gather in joy rather than sorrow. So this unique blend of, it is a unique blend of ancient tradition and religious influence, insights or highlights the Mexican approach to life, where even death is seen as a vibrant and meaningful part of existence.
What's it meant in your family over the years, Gabby? Like, has it always been celebrated in a very big way?
Yes, where I am coming from, I'm from Mexico City. It is huge. Like the streets are covered. Downtown is like it has the biggest, celebration right now. So it was part of the tradition, going with my mom, my family, and walking on the streets and seeing, all these altars and decorations. And yeah, it has been there forever.
The marigolds I mentioned, what's the significance of that flower?
Yeah, we call them cempasúchil. They are placed on altars during Day of the Dead because of their bright orange or yellow colors or pink. This represents the sun and light. So it's believed to guide the spirits back to the world of the living. The Aztecs believed that the scent and color of the flowers could attract the souls of the deceased. So these petals are often scattered to create paths, symbolically lining the way of spirits to find their families. So the flower association with the cycle of life and death also makes an important symbol in Mexican culture, reminding people of the beauty in both life and afterlife.
Of course, we're here to connect with our community in Winnipeg, which is growing. Can you tell us a little bit about what's planned?
Yeah, we are having a big event this Saturday at the Forks from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. Everybody's welcome. We're going to have an altar so people can join and help us decorate the altar. Instead of placing photos of the beloved ones, they can place a marigold, like a paper one, right? They can build that and they can place it to remember their beloved ones. We're going to have music. We're going to have paint night. Everything is free. It's a free admission. Just the paint night costs $10, but we have limited spots available. We're going to have food, and everybody's welcome to come.
Lovely. How big is our Mexican community now in terms of numbers of families, or is it fairly connected and active? It's been a long time since we've done any detailed, exploration of how the community's grown and changed.
That is a very good question. I haven't looked into that. We're not on the number one of immigration numbers. I saw Mexicans were we are placed on the 19th place. So I'm very sorry. I have no idea.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah.
We are allowed right now, so that's good.
Tell me a little bit about something else that's happening, because I understand there's something called, is it the Little Faces of Mexico dance?
Yes. That is a way of us to pass on the traditions for the new generations. So they are the new generations, right? And they're gonna present some dances, traditional dances. They've been practicing so much, and we are very proud of them and excited to see them this Saturday coming back.
Of course. It's always about the next generation of the kids, right?
Yes.
So cute. So thank you very much for being with us this morning, Gabby. Appreciate you coming on and inviting everybody down to the Forks.
Thank you.
That's Gabby Landa, the Public Relations Officer with the Mexican Association. So the events we're talking about tomorrow, the Day of the Dead begins at the Forks in the upper room, the event at 4 o'clock. Everything is free. And we have a little bit of music now, actually, because Winnipeg's Mariachi Ghost is celebrating the Day of the Dead as well. This is tomorrow night at the West End Cultural Centre. They're not only celebrating loved ones who've moved on, though, they're also saying farewell to their fans for now. The band started playing 15 years ago. Now, with 11 children among among them, they say it's kind of busy, so they're taking what they call a parental leave break to focus on their families. So tomorrow's concert should be big and bold and beautiful and lots of fun. Their last performance for a little bit. So Mariachi Ghost. Enjoy it if you're going tomorrow night. Here they are with Marigold or Compasuchil.
Déjame una flor aquí en la puerta. Ay, para saber que no estás muerta. Deja tu candor aquí en mi mente. Dame tu poder. Hazme más fuerte, mi madre. Santa muerte, te traigo la sangre que me has pedido. Santa muerte, yo soy tu guerrero y la llevaré. Santa muerte, yo soy el machete, soy el jinete. Santa muerte, yo soy el castigo del pecador. Ahí les va mi dolor. Con esta flor, la flor del miedo, flor de la culpa, el dolor, que yo te encuentro. Pecador, sé que sientes temor, de que este espíritu mate tu cuerpo. Santa muerte, te traigo la sangre que me has pedido. Santa muerte, yo soy tu guerrero y la llevaré. Santa muerte, yo soy el machete, soy el jinete. Santa muerte, yo soy el castigo del pecador. Ahí les va mi dolor.
Mariachi Ghosts are going to celebrate the Day of the Dead tomorrow night with a concert at the West End Cultural Centre, which could be their last in a little while, just for a break here, not their last ever. They're going to take a break to do some family duties. They're busy, 11 kids among them all. So Mariachi Ghosts, you can check them out tomorrow night at the West End. Right now it is 7:25 a.m. and just getting updated here. We've got a traffic update. We've been talking about a collision at Salter and Logan. We understand that now is clear. So that is clear. Salter and Logan, it had been an issue at the base of the Slaw-Rebchuk Bridge, so you should be smooth sailing through there. And call us if not at 788-3093. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC this Friday, November the 1st. Thanks so much for joining us. Scott Reguera is with us now. Hey, Scott.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. How'd your boys do last night? Did you do a little Halloween in? What did you dress up
too
as?
well. My little guy went out as Shohei Ohtani in a uniform that I made for him with a blue T-shirt and white hockey tape.
Cute.
And my big guy went out as The Cure's lead singer, Robert Smith.
Oh.
He's 16, though, Emerson. So, and then my 10-year-old went out as a combination of Deadpool and Banana. I don't know what people liked it, but I don't know what he was doing with that. And I got all of his Wonder Bars last night, which is the important thing.
Requires more information for me, but I do support your love of Wonder Bar. People are writing in this morning about number of kids. We'll get to those neighborhoods and numbers a little later here. How Manitoba did. Looks like a lot of people did well. We had good weather here. All right, let's get into football. So Brady Oliveira is once again up for CFL's highest individual honor, and right.
Yeah, and he led the league in rushing, had plenty of catches too. His stats are off the charts, so we'll see whether he can do what he didn't do last year when he failed to get by Chad Kelly, for the Most Outstanding Player Award. This time he's up against another Eastern quarterback, Bo Levi Mitchell of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and I think he has to be considered the front runner. If Oliveira does win the Most Outstanding Player Award, he'll accomplish something very few Canadians have, Marcy. He'd become just the fourth player from this country to win the league's top individual honor.
Looking back at the other great Canadians before me that have played, especially at this position, they've kind of been leading the way, and I feel fortunate enough to be in this position now where I can kind of lead the way for the next generation. I take great pride in back-to-back years, being up for an MLP award and being one of the best players in this league. It's something that I want to continue to do while I'm in this league and hopefully just get the younger generation to keep on following my footsteps.
Another running back, John Cornish, was the last Canadian winner of the Most Outstanding Player Award. That was back in 2013. And before Cornish, Marcy, it had been decades when receiver Tony Gabriel and quarterback Russ Jackson were winners back in the 60s and 70s. But of course, Oliveira has more than personal glory on his mind at the moment. His Bombers want to avenge that narrow loss in last year's Grey Cup game. Winnipeg awaits the winner of tomorrow's semifinal between Saskatchewan and BC.
Now, speaking of semifinals tomorrow, our stadium's going to be busy anyway because of university football, because the Bisons are going for the semifinals against the Regina Rams. I really hope they win, and also just because Brian Dobie, it's his last season after so many years with the Bisons. This will be the second time in the Cup. And then other history could be made, because remember, we got Maya Turner, Manitoba Bisons kicker.
That's right.
First woman to play in U Sports regular season. Could she be the first in a Vanier Cup? I sure hope so. That
would be pretty cool.
Yeah, good luck to the Bisons tomorrow. All right, let's go to hockey. Still talking local. The Jets look to continue their winning ways tonight.
Yeah, they're in Columbus to face the Blue Jackets. So Scott Arniel will be up against the former team that he coached in this game. And the Jets are just looking to continue their winning ways after they beat Detroit the last time out 6-2. As for last night's hockey.
Loose in front here. Great chance down low. Ovechkin scores!
Where have I heard that before? More than 800 times we've heard that before. Alex Ovechkin with a goal, in this case helping Washington top Montreal. The Russian is now just 37 tallies away from passing Wayne Gretzky on the all-time list.
Wow. And in basketball, history is going to be made tomorrow in Toronto.
Right. Vince Carter will make history when he becomes the first Raptor to have his jersey retired. His number 15 will be raised to the rafters ahead of Toronto's game against Sacramento. Pretty tough to overstate the impact Vinsanity had on the sport in this country. But the fact the Raptors have 3 Canadians in their lineup right now, R.J. Barrett, Chris Boucher, and Kelly Olynyk, well, that can be traced back to Carter. Here's Olynyk.
You're seeing, a lot of kids who, me was one of them, went in their backyards and are trying to emulate what he did on the court. We wanted to play basketball so much because of, the Raptors and Vince and the excitement it brought. But now you're seeing my age group or those people now have kids and they're putting their kids into basketball because they are basketball fans now. So now the whole effect is multi-generational.
My 10-year-old that dresses like a banana/Deadpool is a big basketball player. He's tall, likes to handle the ball. He fashions his game after Kelly Olynyk, who fashioned it after Vince Carter. So there you go, direct lineage.
I love
The
that.
Carter Effect, a great documentary worth watching this weekend because it'll be on point.
All right, thanks a lot. Have a great weekend, Scott.
You too.
That's Scott Ricker with CBC Morning Sports. Still ahead, we're going to get into Hallmark movies. A lot of them are shot here in Manitoba. But the question is, when is it too old to be a romantic lead in a Hallmark movie? That's causing a stir. It's the subject of an age discrimination lawsuit right now, and we asked you about it. Stay tuned. That's our community reporter out and about. Jim Agapito out and about getting answers to that. That's after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 2 degrees, a mild start to Friday, and a mild start to November. We're still above normal. Cloudy today with a high of 7. The cost of reopening Portage and Main to pedestrians is on the rise. A new city report says it will cost $21 million, up from an approved budget of $13 million. Only one construction company bid on the work, and that bid came in higher than expected. The work is supposed to be complete by July. City Council voted to reopen the intersection after an earlier report said it would cost $73 million to repair the walkway below Portage and Main. One person's in custody after a car crashed into a number of parked vehicles right in the middle of prime trick-and-treating time. Winnipeg police say it happened at Roach and Larson and Elmwood just after 7 last night. Police say no one was hurt, but a number of vehicles were damaged. A lawsuit filed this week alleges negligence by staff at the Health Sciences Centre led to or contributed to the death of a teenage girl last year. The 17-year-old entered the Winnipeg Hospital's emergency department after expressing suicidal thoughts to a school counselor. The lawsuit says hospital staff ignored the girl's request to be admitted in the hospital's mental health ward and that a nurse who cared for her was dismissive of her mental health state. The girl attempted suicide and was declared brain dead a few days after entering the hospital. The lawsuit says the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority is vicariously liable in the death. None of the allegations have been tested in court. 2 Winnipeggers have been named as suspects in a shooting in BC at the home of a popular Punjabi singer in September. One is in custody, but the other, they believe, is no longer in the country. Liam Britton has the story for us from Vancouver.
AP Dillon, performing at last year's Junos, has filled arenas across Canada and toured the world with his music. But in September, a violent scene at his home in Colwood, outside Victoria. Video posted by Indian media outlets show a person firing 14 shots into a home, while 2 cars burn. No one was hurt. Mounties say it was targeted, and now they are naming 2 people they accuse of being responsible. Abjit Kingra, a 25-year-old from Winnipeg, was arrested for discharge of a firearm with intent and arson. He was arrested in Ontario, where he made a court appearance. 23-year-old Vikram Sharma, last known to live in Winnipeg, is subject of a warrant for the same crimes, but he is now thought to be in India. Indian media reports that a member of a gang based in that country claimed responsibility for the shooting. Mounties have told CBC they can't comment on that. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Shared Health is taking over ambulance services in Thompson. That city's local firefighter and emergency department has provided the service in exchange for provincial resources. But the city says the department lacks adequate funding and faces staffing vacancies in the backdrop of a soaring ambulance call volume. Thompson's mayor, Colleen Smook, says the municipality will now focus on fire prevention.
Our crews are just the best, but there's no quality of life for them if they're busy with the ambulances and if they're with the fire. We've got training that needs to be done, inspections on apartment block, in-school training for the kids. We are surrounded by forest, so we also have to have works and training should there ever be a wildfire.
Shared Health is going to assume responsibility for Thompson's ambulance service starting in February. The number of people killed in Spain's catastrophic floods has now climbed to 202. Rescue crews are still searching for dozens more. The areas in the east were hardest hit, and they are now cleaning up. Heavy equipment moving mounds of wrecked cars piled up by the raging floodwaters. The government's announced close to $300 million of aid for those affected. Earlier in the week, torrential rain caused Spain's worst flooding in 40 years. While celebrating two holidays in one.
Halloween, happy Diwali. Happy Halloween.
The Tade family was one of many celebrating both Halloween and Diwali last night. Diwali, an annual festival of lights celebrated by more than 1 billion people every year. It represents the victory of good over evil. This year, the main date of the multi-day celebration happened to coincide with Halloween. Sachin Tade and his wife Rashmi say it was fun to experience both celebrations coming together.
I think the spirit or the core of it is the same, to make people happy. And there are certain ways to make people happy. One way is to fill their tummy and they're happy. And the sweets are the best way. Everybody likes it. So I think it's a lot of similarity in a way.
They say it's important their sons understand and respect both traditions. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
I love that. One of our guests yesterday was talking about this as well. At their host did the same thing, Halloween and Diwali, and it was just such a joyful interview. All right, let's get into what's going on in the regional forecast for Friday, November 1st. New month, Abby. What do we got?
Yeah, new month, but the clouds still hanging back from yesterday. Cloudy across most of the regions. Right now, Winnipeg at 2 degrees. We should see mostly cloudy skies today. Slight breeze from a slight breeze would come in this afternoon and will warm up to a high of 7. Though it feels chilly this morning at, the wind chill is feeling like -5 for folks out there. So if you're making that transition from one bus to another, try to stay warm. Brandon is at 1 at this time, still cloudy also for that region. This will be clearing as you get close to late afternoon, and then the highs for that region, you warm up to about 8 degrees, and you see these clear skies try to give way for some fog patches later tonight into overnight, with temperatures dropping to -7. Thompson is at -12 now, mostly cloudy skies you're seeing. We're looking for a mix of sun and clouds for that region to warm up things. You see highs close to -2, though it feels like -16 this morning as you start your day. Further north in Churchill, it is -8 and cloudy. Expect cloudy conditions with periods of snow later in the day, holding steady near -7, though it feels like a -15 with the wind chill for folks up there. Down in Dauphin, -3 and mainly clear now. Today's forecast calls for a mix of sun and clouds this afternoon, and you'll be warming up to about 8 degrees. Partly cloudy conditions will roll in later in the evening. Gimli at 1, cloudy out there. The forecast for the Interlake region calls for this mainly cloudy weather, and you warm up to about 8 degrees this afternoon. Steinbeck at -1, clear skies you're seeing there. Today's weather will be mainly cloudy, clearing this afternoon with breezy south wind, and then you'd see a high of 8. Morris at -2, cloudy skies you're also seeing. Now, the forecast for the Pembina Valley region calls for mainly cloudy conditions with clearing later in the afternoon. After your lunch break, you should be seeing that break with some sun peeking through, and you warm up to about 8 degrees. So across the province, we're looking at a mix of, cloudy skies with temperatures warming up. From this chilly morning, we're starting with some lows, and then we'll warm up to about 7 to 8 for the southern region. Right now, Winnipeg at 2 degrees. We're warming up to 7 later today.
All right, thanks, Abby Adiyemi.
Thank you.
And Corey Funk now here with Commute News.
Yeah, really no major issues going on right now. For a little while there was some issues at Isabel and Logan, or Isabel/Salter and Logan. There's lights flashing red there, but that has not been restored. Shouldn't be any issues there. But if you see something else going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. If you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
People are writing in this morning, Corey, about how many kids they had in their town or neighborhood on their street all over Manitoba last night for Halloween, and also fave costumes. Apparently, north end of 12th and Morden, they ran out of candy. They had 160 kids. It was crazy in Morden. That's Kim Apperly writing in. fun. Kids Temple sounds a little disappointed. Said, usually I see dozens of kids on the doorstep out in East Kildona and like maybe even like 60, 84 in some years. But last night I had 4 on foot and then like one babe in arms. So really quiet. So she's got some leftover goodies there this morning. Other folks writing in, numbers down in Royalwood area. They had 137 kids, which sounds like a lot, but in Royalwood they would normally get more. Apparently something fun was going down on Dominion Street in Winnipeg last night. Tia Mallory said, this was my favorite thing. I drove past what appeared to be a parade of kids in costume. Kids were running to join in. So there were tons of kids. It was pretty awesome.
That's so fun.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe it was impromptu. People joining a line or something.
That's awesome. It's such a vibe on Halloween. I was just walking around. You just hear kids laughing out and about, like en masse. Like in our neighborhood, it was just bumping out there. People are having fires, and it was just really lovely.
Yeah, you're in central Winnipeg, right?
Yeah. And it's just lots of kids just out and about, and it felt kind of nice, that kind of vibrant vibe that you don't necessarily get any other time of year.
Yeah, it's almost like a block party, right? Yeah, an impromptu block. And the weather cooperated last night. You're talking about people out with some fires.
Nice.
Speaking of which, Chris Allen Budlong said that we did an outdoor fire pit again ourselves. So they were out last night. They're on Lipton between Ellis and St. Matthews, and their count was 146.
Wow.
Last night. So everyone's writing in this morning with some snapshots of costumes. If your neighborhood's not yet represented in our chat here and you want to let us know what it was like in your neighborhood in Winnipeg, on your street or in your town, all over Manitoba, how was Halloween? How many kids at the door, fave costumes? I'm reading from Facebook, by the way. So if you go on my Marcy Marcusa page, you can weigh in today. Fun stuff. It is 7:41 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 9:90 a.m. on the app and YouTube. Well, next on CBC. Hallmark is famous for its annual slate of holiday movies that start this month, November. They start coming out. And we know that we lean into a lot of them because many of them are shot in and around Manitoba. But right now, the company's making headlines for a new lawsuit that was filed in the States. It alleges that a Hallmark executive said a 42-year-old leading actor, a woman, was, quote, getting older and we have to find someone like her to replace her as she gets older, end quote. The executive allegedly said another 60-year-old actress was, quote, too expensive and getting too old. She can't play leading roles anymore, end quote. This begs the question, is age an issue for the people who watch these movies? CBC's Jim Agapito went to talk to some Hallmark fans.
Megan Scarf. I'm 39. I love Hallmark Christmas movies. It just feels really nostalgic. After I get home, I can just go sit on the couch, relax, and watch something that makes me feel cozy.
It's Kathleen Helgeson. I'm 57. I do have my favorite Christmas movies.
Are you a fan of Hallmark movies?
Not really. I find them just a little too cheesy for me.
Allie Schultz, 30. I love Christmas movies. I mean, they're cheesy, but I love them. The Hallmark ones are a little bit more cheesy.
My full name is Camila Triana. I'm 28 years old. Yeah, I like them. I don't know if I'm a fan, but I like them. I enjoy them.
My name is Jonathan Gamage. I'm 18. I'm not really a fan, but I wouldn't mind watching them.
And what about Hallmark ones?
Don't really watch those.
Does age of romantic leads in film matter to you?
For sure it does, because you want to see somebody that's relatable and you want to be able to relate to that character. So I do enjoy movies where the lead characters are more middle-aged.
It matters if they're of similar age is better. It doesn't feel like it's something wrong. I prefer adult people romance.
I wouldn't say so, no.
Why would you say that?
I have never really thought of that in a way. I watch the movies, but I haven't thought of the ages and the differences and stuff.
Not really. I know Hallmark has a formula. There's a lot of older stars that have been there for a long time that I tune in to watch. Older ones where if I know they're going to be in the movie, I'm going to want to watch it, even though they're not the typical young Hallmark star. There's one movie coming out. They're older now, but that's one of the ones I'm looking forward to the most. So
now, do you prefer then seeing someone your own age, younger or older, casted in some of these romantic roles in these movies?
I think I like seeing people my own age, but also I like seeing older people casted in these movies because it's they can find love at an older age, right?
I think I like older people, senior people just falling in love and living. I don't know. It's just cute.
I'd say same or older, but not younger. I wouldn't really be interested in relationships of younger people. but I would be interested in like watching relationships of like older people or my same age.
It's fun to just watch a regular Hallmark movie with young star like going to college or whatever they're doing. But like, I'm a mom, I've got 3 kids, I want to see another mom celebrating Hallmark. I think everybody wants to see themselves represented in movies. So
I don't mind seeing anyone of any age as long as they look their age. So I don't mind seeing somebody that's older as long as they look how they should. I'm not interested in seeing somebody that's had a lot of plastic surgery to their face.
How old is too old when it comes to a lead actor or actress in a romance movie?
I don't think there's too old for me, at least. I don't mind. Like, if they're like almost 100, but I love their character, I don't mind.
I'm not so sure about that. Maybe like 60.
60?
Yeah, I'd say 60, I guess.
I don't know if there's an age. Most Hallmark movies are romantic movies, but I feel like there can be movies that are like not necessarily based on being like on romance. Like, I don't think there's an age.
I don't think there's ever too old. Have you seen The Notebook?
Does the age gap between the romantic duo on screen matter to you?
Realistically, I prefer just to see women and men more the same age with each other. I'm not really interested in seeing older 80-year-old actors with 20-year-old actors, in romantic films. So, yeah, I mean, if we could see somebody that's in their 80s with somebody else in their 80s, I think that would be great.
It's just uncomfortable. It's like if there is a big age gap, it influences people in real life, and those relationships are like very uneven, like not very healthy, not very, I don't like that, I guess.
Is it ever acceptable to you? Like if it's an older man with a younger woman, an older woman with a younger man, or vice versa?
I guess if their age gap is like maybe 5 years, I'm okay with it. If it's more than that, I'll be like, yeah, I don't know about that.
I would want them to be a similar age. Like, if it was part of the plot that they had a big age difference, then that's totally fine.
I think maybe not, because I mean, love is love, right?
Yeah, because I think 60-year-old with like a 30-year-old would be kind of weird, but that's just me. I know like in society, I guess it's acceptable, but like, I don't know if I would find it acceptable.
I don't think so. I'd watch either way.
I think there's stereotypes around an older man with a younger woman, but there's not a stereotype for the vice versa. It doesn't matter to me, right?
I think they're all acceptable, but my preference is to see people that are relatively the same age, maybe 10 or 15 years apart. I don't know why, but I just find it's a little creepy when I see either an older woman with a really young guy or an older man with a really young girlfriend.
Would that stop you from watching a movie?
It might.
So that's CBC's Jim Agapito speaking to Winnipeggers about whether age matters for romantic leads. Quite a talker, as you heard there. Specifically, we were talking about it in relationship to the Hallmark movies, because a new lawsuit's been filed in the United States. A Hallmark exec saying the 42-year-old leading lady was, quote, getting older and we have to find someone like her to replace her as she gets older. This was also a big topic of conversation when the new Top Gun came out, right? Remember Tom Cruise, who is 62 years old? Kelly McGillis, who is 67 years old, was not recast as his romantic lead, and a lot of people were talking about that being an issue. Jennifer Connelly was cast. She's 53 years old. So wondering, if you still have something to add to this conversation. 788-3205 is where you can weigh in if you would like to. It is 12 minutes to 8 o'clock. You have been weighing in this morning on traffic. We have a bit of an update here. Corey's popped back in. Hi.
Yeah, no, earlier there was an incident in Salter. Now, actually, now a new one has popped up on Salter. Got a call from Kathy. Westbound Mountain Avenue, right at Salter. There's a multi-vehicle collision that seems to have just happened. No emergency vehicles on scene or anything like that yet, but it has the entirety of Westbound Mountain blocked at Salter. So that's what Kathy saw. She says it seems to have just happened. So heads up, if you're heading westbound on Mountain, you might get stuck there at Salter. If you see anything else or have any updates for me, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Okay, before you run out of the studio,
okay,
don't overthink this, and I know you kind of will know why I'm asking, but last time you went out for Communities in Focus, it was a trip that I missed because I was sick. Where did you go?
Lac du Bonnet.
Really? Or were you in Lac du Bonnet?
Oh, I see. Lac du Bonnet. Oh, yeah. See, I grew up. See, this was new when I went there. I didn't know that anyone called it Lac du Bonnet until I actually went there. I grew up as Lac du Bonnet, and that was it.
A lot of us did as well. So did I, lactobani. So lactobonnet. What about lactobonnet? Coming up after 8 o'clock on the show, you're going to hear why that name is pronounced a few different ways. And that is coming up with a special report with reporter Emily Brass, who spent a week in the community. And she went on a quest to find out why we're all saying it different ways. How are we supposed to be pronouncing it? And where did the history come from? A special fun report coming up after 8 o'clock.
New this month on CBC Gem, 2 of Canada's longest-running shows are back for their 18th seasons.
You're going to be introduced to a new world.
Murdoch Mysteries brings more intrigue and invention as Detective Murdoch faces new challenges.
I would say it's extremely bad form to arrest your new boss.
And over at Heartland, life on the ranch rolls along at a more relaxed pace.
Looks like Stetson's back to his old self.
Season 18 of Murdoch Mysteries and Heartland. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Time right now is 10 to 8 on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Well, up next on the program, from frozen waffles and pancakes to chicken and mushroom sauces, there has been a fair number of food recalls in Canada this year. 3 Canadians have in fact died in the listeriosis outbreak that was associated with some silk and great value plant-based beverages. And one of the most common culprits behind the recalls, as you can tell by the name listeriosis, is Listeria. But what exactly is it, and how concerned should you be about it in Manitoba? Let's talk food safety this morning. We've reached retired University of Manitoba food science professor Rick Hawley. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what exactly is Listeria?
Well, Listeria is a bacteria, one of 10 that causes foodborne illness in humans. And the range of illnesses that it causes are from very mild to very severe and life-threatening, and it also kills. The organism occurs widely in the environment, and I'm told that if measures are made, 10% of the human population carries Listeria without effect. And so it's certainly a thorny problem to deal with because it may or may not cause problems when it occurs.
How does it compare to some of the other, the other bacteria that are out there that we frequently do reports on that are the subject of food recalls?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. In terms of the numbers of illnesses that are caused by the organism each year in Canada, it's not a large number. There seems to be somewhere in the vicinity of about 130 to 150 cases of listeriosis in Canada each year. The disease takes 2 forms, either a mild gastroenteritis, upset tummy, diarrhea, etc., or an invasive disease. And in those cases where this occurs, and it's usually in people who have compromised immune systems, the elderly, the very young, or pregnant women, invasive disease can be established and be life-threatening. So it's rare, but it's with us.
What kind of thing would trigger a recall like the one I mentioned from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency? Obviously, I mentioned that we had deaths in this country, but can you give us a bit of a sense of how much it takes to trigger a recall?
Sure. In the case of a food processing plant, there's a requirement among those food processing plants that prepare ready-to-eat foods. That is, that type of food where it's not given a lethal heat treatment like pasteurization before consumption. So something like cooked cured meat products that are ready to eat would be among that group of products that are at risk. In those cases where the organism might occur and can grow, the Food Inspection Agency, CFIA, mandates that the organism must be absent from these foods. In other foods where the organism cannot grow, or where there's a heat treatment applied that will kill all the organisms that might be present, there is a tolerance of up to 100 Listeria per gram that can occur in food products. And so plants that prepare these higher risky products have a requirement to do environmental sampling in their processing plants on a regular basis. And by that I mean they have to do swab samples for Listeria analysis of the equipment that comes in contact with the food, but also equipment that is in the environment of the food processing equipment. So comprehensive program of sanitation is necessary in order to control the presence of Listeria. One of the characteristics of Listeria that's problematic is that it will form what are called biofilms. These are layers of bacteria and secretions that are sticky, and so the organism then hangs on to its environment to a point where large quantities of organisms are generated, and some of them are shed to the food. The organism can also grow at refrigerator temperatures, and so it's a double whammy. The organism is able to form these biofilms that are hard to remove, and it grows at refrigerator temperatures.
And it hides in people, right? Because for someone it can go undetected, I understand. Just I'm wondering how concerned people should be, especially in Manitoba. How concerned should we be about Listeria? What's your sense of that?
Marcy, as I said, the organism is everywhere. Healthy people can live with the organism. If you're among the subset of folks who have underlying health problems, then I think that there's reason to be wary of eating foods where risk levels are higher. Things like hot dogs, cured meat products, salads are all of that category.
Thank you very much, Rick, for being with us this morning. Appreciate your time.
Oh, you're welcome, Mercy.
That's Rick Hawley, retired University of Manitoba food science professor, walking us through Listeria. This year, as we mentioned, there's been some recalls involving Listeria. It is right now 3 minutes to 8 o'clock on your Friday morning. It's November. You're listening to Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and also with us this morning in our control room, Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, and Kevin Nipatebo. Thank you for spending time with us this morning, everybody. Heather Wells is here also. She's here ahead of World Report with our local news headlines and developing stories. Hi there again.
Good morning, yes. Well, a Winnipegger and a man who has lived in Winnipeg have both been named as suspects in a BC shooting at the home of chart-topping Punjabi singer A.P. Dillon. No one was hurt in the September shooting. We'll hear what happened there coming up at 8:30. As well, one person's in custody after a car crashed into a number of parked vehicles right in the middle of prime time trick-or-treating last night. Winnipeg police say it happened near Roach and Larson in Elmwood just after 7. Police say no one was hurt, but a number of vehicles were damaged. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In traffic, please call Corey with any updates. He was just in updating some situations for us, but 788-3093 if anything's changed on your morning drive, walk, or roll, or wherever you are in the province, give us a call. In the weather forecast, cloudy 2 degrees, winds are calm, that's Winnipeg. Brandon's mostly cloudy 1 degree, very similar, and in Thompson, colder, mostly cloudy and minus 11 right now. In Winnipeg today, we are going to stay above zero. Our high is 7 degrees, and we're going to have a mostly cloudy day ahead. So really similar to yesterday, except a little less sun. Coming up in the next half hour of the show, when CBC Manitoba reporter Emily Brass went on her latest trip for Communities in Focus, she noticed there were a few different ways to pronounce Lac de Bonnie. That sent her on a quest to find out more about the town's name and some of the myths around it. We will hear a report from her coming up after 8. Right now, the World Report. Stay with us. It's 1 minute to.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
Lindsay L. is a former child prodigy guitarist from Calgary who found herself in Nashville making country music. Now she's opening up about what she's gone through, eating disorders, sexual assault, and how it's all led to her making her most personal album yet.
It's like, I need help. I can't do this alone.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Susan Ormiston. Canadians are using food banks in record numbers, and one health institute says it has a solution. Fixing a maximum price for a variety of healthy foods. How to tackle hunger and health, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Election Day in the U.S. is next Tuesday, but already a record number of people have cast their ballot in early voting. More than 65 million people have been to the polls, a sign perhaps of just how close this contest will be. And pundits are forecasting the outcome will likely be determined by key swing states. Georgia is one of those. Support from Black communities there is critical to both presidential candidates. My World Report co-host John Northcott has the story from Savannah.
Lunchtime at Savannah State University, the oldest historically Black university in Georgia. Freshmen and sophomore students grab a bite and sit outside in the sunshine. This is their first election as voters, and they're looking for change. Chaz Ferguson is 18.
Our ancestors went through a lot. Slavery, they went through a lot for us to get this freedom. They didn't do all that for nothing.
Joe Biden won Georgia in 2020 by just 0.2%. With over 30% of the state's population who identify as Black, it's an absolutely essential demographic for the Democrats. Journalist Tia Mitchell co-hosts the podcast Politically Georgia.
Black voters are the backbone of the Democratic Party.
But there are concerns this year about Black voter turnout. And the polls suggest some Black Georgians are warming to Trump's message.
If I said I understood that, I would be lying.
Democratic organizer Felicia Vereen admits it's a challenge.
But I really think that they believe that in the past he has helped their businesses, he has helped them to make more money.
But for the young students at Savannah State, though, the choice is clear. Jasmine Hall and Gabrielle Thomas are both 19. They're for Kamala Harris, not Donald Trump.
As a college student, I shouldn't vote for him. And as a woman, he's taking away the abortions and student loans.
It's such a long list. Right. It's a very long list.
And then he's racist.
In an election this tight, as people weigh who best understands their history and their hopes, a few thousand Georgia voters could decide for the whole country who will be the next president. John Northcott, CBC News, Savannah, Georgia.
And John will be reporting and hosting from this key state until after Election Day. Stay tuned for special editions of World Report in Georgia tomorrow and Sunday. Election officials in Georgia are urging Elon Musk to take down a video they say is misinformation. The post, which appears on X and other social media, purportedly shows a Haitian immigrant. In it, he claims to have voted many times using multiple Georgia IDs. Georgian officials say the video is fake and likely foreign election interference by Russia. Gabriel Sterling speaks for the state.
Well, we have done more to invest in list maintenance than any other state in the country. We arguably have the cleanest voting lists in America. So we have a very secure system. We know it's safe, we know it's secure, and we know it's easy to vote.
U.S. agencies have previously warned Russia intends to fan divisive narratives ahead of the election. Moscow has denied the accusation. And Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are crisscrossing the country this weekend, trying to get Americans on their sides. Both candidates are looking for critical votes in the key swing states, Georgia included. Karen Pauls is following the election campaign from Washington. And Karen, both candidates held late-night events. What are the highlights?
Former President Donald Trump is increasingly undermining public confidence in this election. Again, last night in Arizona, he repeated false election fraud claims during an interview with former Fox host Tucker Carlson. Trump never conceded defeat to Joe Biden in 2020. He says he will win on Tuesday unless there's cheating.
We're doing very well. I think we're leading by a lot. If we can keep that cheating down, because there are a bunch of cheats If we can keep that cheating down, we're going to have a tremendous victory. I think it'll go down as one of the greatest victories of all time.
There is no evidence of cheating or voter fraud. Vice President Kamala Harris promised to fight for working people in Las Vegas. She was joined by celebrity Jennifer Lopez, who got emotional when talking about the comment about Puerto Rico being a floating island of garbage at Trump's rally last weekend.
He has consistently worked to divide us. At Madison Square Garden, he reminded us who he really is and how he really feels. It wasn't just Puerto Ricans that were offended that day, okay? It was every Latino in this country. It was humanity and anyone of decent character.
So, Karen, what is on the agenda for today?
Harris and Trump are both in Wisconsin. Sunday is the deadline for early voting there. Harris has a concert and rally at the Wisconsin State Fairground featuring big names like Glorilla, Flo Milli, and the Isley Brothers. Cardi B is expected to speak. Trump is holding a rally just 10 kilometers away. Wisconsin is an extremely close race. Polling shows Harris holds the slimmest of leads over Trump there.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Karen Pauls in Washington. Air Canada promised to become more accessible. That commitment came after our colleagues at Marketplace investigated issues for travelers with disabilities. The team went back undercover to see if Air Canada is living up to their promise. Travis Danraj has the story.
In Zone 1 are invited to board.
Brock Richardson is a two-time Paralympian who's navigating an Air Canada flight from Toronto to Fredericton with his wheelchair.
I have cerebral palsy.
Brock saw a report last year about major issues with accessible air travel in Canada. Air Canada promised to do better, but during Richardson's trip, there was no lift at Fredericton Airport, and he wasn't always boarded before other passengers, as Air Canada said would happen.
There is some vulnerability that goes on when you're being transferred.
Before staff transferred him from his seat, his support person was asked to leave the plane because she wasn't going to physically assist.
She knows my every need every second of every day. They don't.
After some back and forth, she's allowed to stay. Our producer also witnessed an Air Canada manager appearing to record Richardson on a phone during a transfer without his permission. Tom Stevens is the company's VP of Customer Experience Strategy.
I cannot confirm whether that has happened or not. We need to investigate further. It's not Air Canada policy to do that. We do take photos occasionally of mobility aids that are being stowed to ensure that there's no damage.
The company says only Richardson's empty wheelchair was photographed and offer him a $1,000 coupon to show their regret for his overall experience. They add they're working on better training and more equipment. Travis Danraj, CBC News, Toronto.
Alberta is making big changes to the way it deals with gender-affirming care and sex education. The provincial government has introduced bills addressing the issues in the legislature. As Aaron Collins reports, Premier Danielle Smith is already getting pushback.
Bill 26.
Bill 27. Bill 29. The fairness.
A busy day in Alberta's legislature.
All those in favor of the motion for first reading, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no.
A flurry of bills dealing with sexuality, among them restrictions on gender-affirming care for minors, including access to surgery and puberty blockers, a move to protect kids, according to Premier Danielle Smith.
These policies are designed and intended to help preserve the choices children have before they make serious decisions about their bodies.
The bills will also change sex ed in schools. Parents will now have to opt their kids in instead of opting out, a problem for Pam Krause, who operates Calgary's Centre for Sexuality.
There's lots and lots and lots of parents who are really, really happy that sexual health education takes place in schools, and they don't need an extra layer of approval.
Schools will now have to inform parents when kids ask to change their pronouns too, and Alberta will restrict transgender athletes' participation in sport. Laws that have more to do with politics than policy for NDP leader Naheed Nenshi.
The only health care and education bills coming forth this session are bills to satisfy people who may or may not vote for the Premier this Saturday.
Danielle Smith faces a leadership review this weekend. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
And the Collins Dictionary has declared its word of the year for 2024. They say it's been the year of brat.
I went my own way and I made it. I'm your favorite reference, baby. Call me Deborah, yeah, you're so
The dictionary says brat is characterized by a confident, independent, and hedonistic attitude. It's the name of the latest album by British singer Charlie XCX. Another word on the Collins list is era, inspired by the name of Taylor Swift's world tour. The dictionary makes its annual selection with the help of a computer program that monitors a global database of more than 20 billion words. And that is the latest national and international dance news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Brat, huh? Wouldn't have guessed it. I'm Mercy Warkusa with our team here live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. All of those places, you're on CBC. Thanks for being here. Hopefully had a good Halloween, November 1st. It's 2 degrees in Winnipeg. It's Friday. This half hour, we've got quite a good local story for you. Because just when you think you know everything about Manitoba, you're like, oh, have I been saying that wrong for years? When CBC Manitoba reporter Emily Brass went on her latest trip for CBC Manitoba's Communities in Focus series, she noticed there were a few different ways people were pronouncing Lac de Bonnie. That sent her on a quest to find out more about that, the town's name, and some of the myths around it. She's in with a report this half hour. Stay with us. Heather Wells is here first with our news headlines. Good morning to you again.
Good morning. Well, we are learning more about how many Manitobans are accessing free birth control. In the month since the program's been in place, more than 12,000 Manitobans have been provided free prescription contraceptives. We're going to hear from the health minister coming up. As well, the cost of reopening Portage and Main to pedestrians is on the rise. A new city report says it's going to cost $21 million. That's up from an approved budget of $13 million. We'll hear why in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into the forecast now. Abby, how's Friday going to be?
Mostly cloudy skies in the south and a mix of sun and clouds up north with light snow in Churchill. That's what the forecast looks like for today. Right now, Winnipeg, 2 degrees. The mercury hasn't moved much. Cloudy outside. We should see these mostly cloudy conditions to stay with us. And then a slight breezy afternoon. We do warm up to, we're still warmer than our usual for this time of the year. Today we get to around 7 degrees and it might feel chilly this morning as you start your day. And tonight, mostly we're going to see some clear skies and then a few clouds will roll in. The winds will calm down and then we drop to about 5 degrees. Up north, we're looking at cooler with cloudy skies with light snow expected. Minus 12 in Thompson at this time, minus 8 in Churchill. And down south, we're looking at most of the regions getting to a high of 8 degrees. Right now, Dauphin at minus 2 and Morris at 0. Winnipeg at 2 degrees.
People are writing best costumes at the door last night that you saw, and also how many kids, and shout out your neighborhood or town. So apparently a family showed up to Rosalie Finch's home, and you know the movie Inside Out 2? It explores all the emotions. Well, they dressed up as joy, fear, anger, and sadness and disgust. And it's awesome. They all look like the different emotions. I love that. 30 kids in Wildwood. Also had 85 kids. Sarah Jane writing in from Selkirk. 85 kids in Selkirk. Luxton neighborhood. Tamara Cooley said 170 trick-or-treaters and ran out of candy there. So far, the biggest number seems to be Wolseley, which is 254 people are writing in about. Janine wrote in earlier. So if you still want to get in on the numbers game this morning, you can do that on Facebook. We've been taking calls on the traffic line as well. There's been a couple things going on this morning. Corey's back.
Yeah, I got a call from Kathy earlier, right after she said there was this was probably about 20 minutes or so ago. There was a collision westbound Mountain at Salter. It was blocking the entirety of westbound Mountain. I haven't got any updates since, so that may still be an issue. Heads up there. As well, Regent Avenue West, just past La Jamaudière, there's a stall blocking the curb lane going eastbound on Regent Avenue West. So keep left to get around. around that. If you see something else going on, give me a call, whether you're walking, biking, driving. Would love to hear from you. That number, 204-788-3093.
Earlier in the show, we were talking about Hallmark movies. A lot of them are shot here. But the company is right now the subject of a lawsuit. It's been filed in the States. It alleges a Hallmark executive said a 42-year-old leading actor, a woman, was, quote, getting older and we have to find someone like her to replace her as she gets older, end quote. So we asked you about women in the movies and age, and if you watch these movies, does any of this factor into how you feel about watching them? We did get a call on the listener line.
Good morning. My name is Charlene Eckert. I was listening to your story this morning about Hallmark movies, and at first I laughed and then I didn't. My 62-year-old husband has been a massive fan of Hallmark movies for at least 10 years. He sits down, gets a blanket, and snuggles right in, and never says anything about the age of any of the characters because he just loves the Hallmark movies so much. However, one thing that did come to mind on your story today about how these two women in particular were aged out of appeal for a movie, it would appear, it struck me as this is just another piece that tells women in society, in the real world, that as you age, you become less valuable, less interesting, less appealing. And curiously, did anybody challenge the age of the male actors? Thank you.
I had that question myself. 788-3205 if you want to weigh in. Well, every so often, CBC Manitoba sends journalists to cities and towns outside of Winnipeg for our ongoing series. It's called Communities in Focus. Earlier this month, Emily Brass visited Lac du Bonnet. Or, hang on a minute, is it Lac du Bonnet? She joins us now to discuss that pressing question. Good morning.
Hi, Marcy.
It is pressing. I lived here my whole life. I had no idea that there were different ways. I've always said Lac du Bonnet.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, Lac du Bonnet, though, could be correct. Which is it?
Well, that depends on who you ask, although it does seem that most people say it like this.
Lac du Bonnet?
Lac du Bonnet.
Lac du Bonnet.
And, that's definitely the way I've heard it pronounced down here in Winnipeg as well. But when you actually go to that town and start talking to people, you'll also hear it said like this.
Lac du Bonnet.
Did you grow up around here?
No, I just moved here in 63.
Well, that's a while ago.
It's a while ago, yeah.
My grandpa, he is Ukrainian, and he usually says, Lac du Bonnet, he has a strong accent.
I go with Lac du Bonnet. I believe I'm a local. Most locals I know go by Lac du Bonnet.
Now, that said, there are also some lifelong townsfolk who say it this way.
Lac du Bonnet.
You say Bonnet?
Yeah.
And how come?
It's the way I grew up knowing it.
Lac du Bonnet.
Bonnet.
Yeah.
Are you French?
Yeah. Well, Canadian.
I always reckon it's like that sort of liqueur I used to drink, and it was called Dubonnet.
I like that. So obviously there's a lot of ways to pronounce this. Do people ever get, though, offended by, how a person says it if it's not, if it doesn't match?
Well, I'd say most people up there are pretty laid back. And, here's what I heard from a couple of, I'm going to say boomer-aged locals just outside the post office.
Well, Lac du Bonnet is English and Lac du Bonnet is French.
So you think both are acceptable?
Well, yeah, if you're English or French, it's up to you. I mean, you'll get to the same place. Whether you ask directions, you're going to get to the same place, right?
Lac du Bonnet is how I pronounce.
But you've heard bonnet growing up?
Absolutely, yeah, Lac du Bonnet.
So is there ever any arguments of the proper way to say it?
No, but if you're ever going to hear an argument about it, it would be in front of the post office because that's where all the locals meet to discuss everything. So, no, but so Lac du Bonnet or Lac du Bonnet.
Either one goes.
Either one goes, yeah. You won't get in trouble for either one. Yeah.
And I should add, I've also heard a few folks say LDB. So if you can't decide how to say it, that's one way to avoid saying it altogether.
Good tip. Good tip. How did you decide how to pronounce it, given you spent a week up there?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I never knew if I was saying it right, and I was intrigued by all the pronunciations, and I wanted to get to the bottom of it. So I visited the Historical Museum and asked its president, Terry Tottle.
Lac du Bonnet, probably both ways, and it's unconscious when you when you say it, I guess.
So Toddle's pretty neutral on the pronunciation, but he's not that way on the origin of the name. So you've probably heard this. The legend goes that French-Canadian voyageur La Vérendrye visited the area in the 1730s, and he thought the fluvial lake on Winnipeg River resembled a cap, and therefore he dubbed it Lac du Bonnet. Now, I'm sure many people in the audience have also heard that story. I heard it several times while I was up there, but the local historian does not agree.
There's no truth to the urban myth. La Vérendrye's maps, the information that he's taken back out east, he has a straight line from Lake of the Woods to Lake Winnipeg. There's a straight line for the Winnipeg River.
So he couldn't have known the shape?
No.
So he never mentioned the word bonnet?
No, not at all.
And how much later was it that the name started being used?
Yeah, it was 1793.
So that would be about 6 decades after La Vérendrye visited Manitoba, and Toddle says that's when other explorers started using the name. He says records from the 1700s suggest it's much more likely the name bonnet referred to an Indigenous headdress, and he says it's unclear whether La Vérendrye even visited the Lac du Bonnet area at all.
And the plot thickens. Now, this might be surprising news to people who've heard, as you said, this story before about La Vérendrye their whole lives. How did the story go so wrong then?
Well, while I was at the museum, Terry introduced me to Jack Halliday. His grandfather's considered one of the first, if not the first, homesteader in the area. W.D. Halliday arrived there in 1900, and he was a pretty remarkable figure in the community.
This is the part of my grandfather's original homestead, and this is where I grew up along with my 6 sisters. Our buildings were right here where the museum is located right now. And, we had farmland just to the north and west of here. These roads that are passed through here now were not there at the time we lived here, but so we had cattle and pigs and all the chickens and all the usual farm animals.
Jack says his grandfather wasn't only a farmer, he was also a school official. He later became secretary-treasurer for the local government just as it was being established. Halliday was said to have helped newcomers from places like Poland and Scandinavia who couldn't read English. He'd help them understand documents and write replies for them. He bought and sold wild rice from local First Nations people, and he started a transportation business with a horse and buggy or a sleigh or cutter sled in the winter, and Halliday carried government VIPs. He took the doctor out on house calls, and later he got into hauling freight to and from places like Bissett and Beresford Lake during the mining boom. And he also kept a diary, and Jack and I took a look at a page from that diary together.
Okay, this is a document that was written up by my grandfather in 1934 of the history of the Lac du Bonnet area.
He says here, Lac du Bonnet proper was named by La Vérendrye, a French-Canadian explorer of 1732, because to him the lake resembled a bonnet or a cap.
Yeah.
Hat. What do you think about that? That rumor still persists today?
I don't know how they would have. It seems to me you'd have to have an airplane or a drone to take a picture, aerial view to establish that it was like a cap.
Now that we know that that's a myth, does it change how you think of some of your grandfather's stories? Or?
Oh, he probably, like everybody in the days, he probably embellished some of the stories a bit.
That can happen. No judgment.
Yes.
But it's interesting to hear, with the early days of Lac du Bonnet, which is, I'm in Winnipeg, that's how I say it. But did he help you with your quest? I mean, to learn how the name of his town, is pronounced?
Yes. So after we took that deep dive into the origin of the name, I had to go back to my original question and get Jack's take. How did your family say it when you were growing up?
It was always Lac du Bonnet as far as I've ever known. I guess there were people that called it Lac du Bonnet, but I guess the original French pronunciation was Lac du Bonnet, so that's gradually became sort of anglicized to Lac du Bonnet.
And Marcy, Jack is 86 years old. He's the grandson of the area's first homesteader, so I decided to go with how Jack says it. And I've been signing off on all my communities and focus pieces as Lac du Bonnet.
I'm glad you got a tiebreaker at least.
Yeah, he was the perfect tiebreaker.
I don't think I could get used to saying LDB, although it would be the safest, I guess.
Yeah, that's the neutral way to go.
Thanks so much for bringing this in.
Thank you, my pleasure.
That is a special report from CBC's Emily Brass, who came in to studio to share the pronunciation of Lactabani. I knew I would revert. By the way, the video of her quest to find out more about the name is on our website. You can check it out at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
So did you push it like I did? You have to put everything to bed? Your garden, that is, this weekend. It is now November 1st. And we had such a warm fall and a warm October. I think a lot of us waited, maybe still waited to put everything and get it done. So don't worry. We have some last minute advice for you on the Radio Noon call-in today. Between 12:30 and 1, Dave Hansen will be the guest to talk about putting that garden to bed for the winter. If you want to weigh in or have a question now, 788-3797, you can leave it there. Well, speaking of calls, we were talking about Hallmark movies and also the age of the leading actors in Hallmark movies. There's a lawsuit right now against an exec that made some disparaging comments against a female lead. Here's another call we got on this topic.
Hi there, my name's Laura Law. I just heard the Hallmark story, and I wanted to add that my favorite podcast right now is the Office Ladies podcast. Not only because I just absolutely love The Office, but also just because I love seeing 50-year-old women in media, and I feel like it's so refreshing. And as you know, a girl in her early 20s, it's just nice to see that perspective somewhere in media. So yeah, I feel like people would love Hallmark movies with, later aged women. Because later-aged women have so much confidence and spunk, and love them.
Thanks for the call. And on behalf of myself, a 50-year-old woman, thanks for the call. There's a lot of discussion, especially among women, about feeling invisible at a certain stage and age of life. And I am talking about no matter what you do or what your path has been, whether you have been whether you've spent your life in a rural area or a city, whether you have spent your life, raising children or raising a company or whatever you've done in your life, there's just this constant thread that at a certain age, women start to feel invisible. That's part of this conversation as well. So if you want to weigh in on that, hey, I'm all here to talk. 788-3205 is the listener line. And if you want to hear more about that, the story that started all of this and the Hallmark issue, we'll put that up on our CBC Listen app a little bit later. You can also go back in our YouTube stream at any point and you can check it out on the show because the whole show is always there. Now, you've been weighing in on something else this morning. I had just crowned Wolseley with the neighborhood that had maybe the most kids last night based on what you wrote in about for Halloween. And then all of a sudden, someone wrote in from River Heights and directed me to the neighborhood Facebook page where people are saying that they saw 800 to 1,000 kids in the neighborhood last night. So some people were handing out candy to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids last night. So it was certainly a happy Halloween there, if not an expensive one. But really nice to see everybody out and about. Corey was reflecting earlier about how it felt like almost a block party, kids laughing and holding hands. Apparently on one of the streets, all the kids kind of made an impromptu parade in Winnipeg last night. I think that was Lipton. Well, we have a bit of music before we get to the news and start to think about wrapping the show today. This is from Janet Jacobs, whose musical style was refined by a series of seemingly endless goodbyes because she lived in 3 different countries by the time she was 12. She now writes and performs in Winnipeg. This debut single is called Sweet Nothings.
I tried to drink you away. I tried to sing you away. I tried to think of the ways we could have loved if you never left. Now it's you I can't forget. I tried to write you away, send you into outer space. I almost dug my own grave just to bury you. about you, babe? What is it about you, babe? What is it about you that I just can't erase? If we're 1,000 miles apart, how do you still have my heart? How do you keep on giving me sweet nothings? I'm living on 1,000 memories. I see you in my dreams with your sweet nothings. Remember we had something, keep on giving you sweet. And still you fill up my mind. I feel you in my body all the time. All day and night, black and white, a memory just passed me by. I'm lost without your touch. You affect this much about me, babe. What is it about you, babe? Something I just can't erase, no matter how hard I try. If we're 1,000
Little taste of Winnipegger Janet Jacobs' debut single called Sweet Nothings. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. It's 2 degrees, a mild start to Friday, a mild start to November. Still above normal for this time of year. Our high today is going to be 7. The cost of reopening Portage and Main to pedestrians is on the rise. A new city report says it will cost $21 million. That is up from an approved budget of $13 million. Only one construction company bid on the work, and that bid came in higher than expected. The work is supposed to be complete by July. City Council voted to reopen the intersection after an earlier report said it would cost $73 million to repair the walkway below Portage and Main. We are learning more about how many Manitobans are accessing free birth control. It's been 1 month since the province started providing free prescription contraceptives. Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera says it has been a popular program.
12,436 Manitobans signed up for free birth control, with many more accessing it each and every day.
Question period yesterday. Asseguera says providing free birth control allows people to take control of their health and ultimately saves the province money. The program is estimated to cost $11 million a year. In October, the federal government also committed to paying for birth control, and the province says it's working with Ottawa to use that federal money for other programs. A lawsuit filed this week alleges negligence by staff at the Health Sciences Centre led to or contributed to the death of a teenage girl last year. The 17-year-old entered the Winnipeg Hospital's emergency department after expressing suicidal thoughts to a school counselor. The lawsuit says hospital staff ignored the girl's request to be admitted in the hospital's mental health ward, and that a nurse who cared for her was dismissive of her mental health state. The girl attempted suicide and was declared brain dead a few days after entering the hospital. The lawsuit says the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority is vicariously liable in the death. None of the allegations have been proven in court. One person's in custody after a car crashed into a number of parked vehicles right in the middle of prime trick-or-treating time. Winnipeg police say it happened near Roach and Larson in Elmwood just after 7 last night. Police say no one was hurt, but a number of vehicles were damaged. The RCMP say one man is in custody and another is wanted for a shooting at the BC home of chart-topping Punjabi singer A.P. Dillon. No one was hurt in that shooting 2 months ago. Police say Abjit Kingra, a 25-year-old from Winnipeg, has been charged with a discharge of a firearm and with intent, as well as arson. Another man, 23-year-old Vikram Sharma, who is known to have lived in Winnipeg, is wanted for the same crimes, but police say he is now believed to be in India. Shared Health is taking over ambulance services in Thompson. That city's local firefighter and emergency department has provided the service in exchange for provincial resources, but the city of Thompson says the department lacks adequate funding and faces staffing vacancies in the backdrop of a soaring ambulance call volume. Thompson Mayor Colleen Smook says the municipality will now focus on fire prevention.
Our crews are just the best, but there's no quality of life for them if they're busy with the ambulances and if they're with the fire. We've got training that needs to be done, inspections on apartment block, in-school training for the kids. We are surrounded by forest, so we also have to have works and training should there ever be a wildfire.
Shared Health will assume responsibility for the local ambulance service in Thompson starting in February. Well, Winnipeg trick-or-treaters may have found Halloween to be doubly sweet this year.
Happy Halloween, happy Diwali.
The annual celebration of all things scary fell on the same day as the South Asian Festival of Lights. Diwali is an annual festival celebrated by more than 1 billion people every year. It represents victory of good over evil. Sachin Tade and his wife Rashmi say they want their sons to understand and respect both traditions.
The beauty of living in Winnipeg or in Canada is we have so many cultures around here, and celebrating them together, it makes sense, right? So you understand what the other people do that day.
The Tade family say it was fun to experience both cultures coming together. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
With a last look at the weather, Abby's here.
Today's going to bring mostly cloudy skies in the province. Some areas will see clearing later in the day. Right now, Winnipeg at 2 degrees. We're warming up to a high of 7. And other regions down south will be seeing highs of 8 for Brandon, Dauphin, Gimli, and Morris.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Big thanks to the people who work on the programs week in, week out, the associate producers in our current affairs unit in CBC Manitoba are Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, Issa Kixon, Kalkadam Mulageta, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, Jim Agapito, May McKillop, Bruce Layden, Marshall Hodgins, Angelina Peltier, Dylan Longhurst, and Carmen Ponto doing great work this week, you guys. Really. Community reporter in unit, Shanley Vidal. Our hosts in unit, Nadia Kidwai and Faith Fundal. Producers, Wendy Parker, and this week, Donna Carrero. YouTube producer is Kevin Nipatebo. And Nellie Gonzalez is the show's producer of current affairs over all the shows, and Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. Every Friday I get to do the big thank yous, and it is my pleasure because you guys all work so hard and put together great shows. Big thanks to all the guests as well who talked to all of our associate producers and producers in unit and agree to come on our programs. Thank you for connecting with CBC. Well, one last point of connection. We want to leave you with a little bit of a cheesy call, which we really like, by the way. Our crew really liked this. We were asking how to say lactobani, lactobane, lactobonet.
Has anyone ever called it without a hat, i.e. lack of a bonnet? Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Have a great weekend. On Monday, Corey Funk and I are heading down to the United States. We're going to have a live information radio coverage of the U.S. election the day after, so we're planning for Wednesday morning. And that means that on Monday and Tuesday, I believe that Emily Brass or Faith Fundal are going to be sitting in the chairs. So whoever's here, warm welcomes, and we'll talk to you next week.